Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku was raised by Nezu instead of Inko? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. It was a simple day in fall, and as always Nedzu's day started with a cup of tea while he watched over UA. After all, he was the principal of UA and he needed to make sure the safety of the school was in tip-top shape before the school day started. He was enjoying the pleasant taste of lemon and honey chamomile tea while looking at the security cameras surrounding the UA building. Nothing out of the ordinary so far. The training areas were clear, the cafeteria was empty, the basket outside of the front gates, the faculty. Wait a minute. Nedzu looked over yet again at the camera showing the view outside of the front gates. Yes, that is indeed a basket. A woven straw basket with a light green blanket covering the top. There seemed to be slight movement underneath the blanket. Nedzu jumped from his chair with a certain amount of difficulty due to his short stature. Honestly, he thought he ordered it with the smaller height. Once his feet touched the floor of his office, he headed straight to the front of the UA gates. Once he got there, he lifted the blanket expecting exactly what he saw. The baby. A young human baby with curly green and black hair. The baby opened his eyes at the light that was blocked by the soft blanket, letting out a soft cry from the brightness of the sun. His emerald green eyes peered up at the principal before cooing slightly and reaching for him with his chubby little hands. Nedzu crouched down and picked up the baby gently from the basket. Now that the baby was closer, he could see the freckles that speckled his round little face. The baby's body was dressed in a very old-looking gray onesie that didn't appear to provide much warmth. Taking his eyes away from the baby, he looked back down at the blanket to find any clue of why he was abandoned. Sure enough, there was a small letter under the blanket. Nedzu, while holding the baby safely, opened the letter to read the contents of what reason a human would just abandon a perfectly innocent baby. The baby looked around calmly while in Nedzu's steady hold, clutching at his red tie while he started to read. Hello to whoever is reading this. I couldn't handle raising a baby without his mother. She died in childbirth. When the baby was given to me, I couldn't handle the responsibility combined with the grief of the loss of my love. I tried my best for the past 2 months to love him, but I can't give him the life that he deserves. Please take care of him and love him. When he is old enough, tell him I am sorry for not being strong enough for him. His name is Izuku, his mother gave it to him. There was no signature at the bottom. Well, Nedzu thought as he looked down at the baby. The baby, having noticed the principal was looking at him, let go of the tie he was chewing on to smile at him. At least he's cute. Hello, I found this baby outside of my school and I am adopting him as mine, Nedzu told Detective Tsukachi as he sat down in the chair with help from a step stool. Izuku was cradled in his arms. The father abandoned him because he couldn't handle being a father. Tsukachi read the note over before sighing. I am assuming you came here with the note for me to track down the father? Nedzu smiled. Of course, if only to charge him with child abandonment, because I won't allow him a single chance to be near this child. No father should ever abandon their child no matter their grief. Tsukachi smiled softly. I am also assuming you would like some adoption papers to make the adoption official? Nedzu replied happily, yes, I am taking Izuku as my own. The baby, hearing his name, stirred from his nap to peer up at Nedzu. Nedzu looked down and smiled when the baby smiled happily at him. Izuku's bright green eyes blinked from the lights, his fists clenched softly onto the blanket around him. Tsukachi shook his head with fondness. That kid will be loved by your staff more than you could know. He is probably going to have a lot of people wrapped around his finger. I wouldn't blame them for growing an attachment to him. My son will be shown the love and care that he deserves. And if anyone doesn't agree, then I wouldn't mind teaching them a lesson. Nedzu ended with a sadistic smile. God help whoever gets on Nedzu's bad side by harming Izuku in any way, Tsukachi thought while getting the adoption papers and documents put together for the intelligent animal. He glanced over as Nedzu smiled when Izuku grabbed onto his paw with a gurgled laugh. There was no doubt that that kid would be the death of them all if he was even half as smart as Nedzu. Nedzu watched as Izuku looked around his office making soft noises each time he was interested in something he saw. He was especially interested in the bookshelf and the many colors he saw on the spines. After his trip to the police station, he went to gather materials needed for human infants. The detective gave him a list of items that babies really needed to get. He got the most important items like diapers, milk, pacifiers, bottles, and a crib before he ventured on to toys, clothes, and other things he knew Izuku would like. After gathering a multitude of items, he went back to his office right as the teachers were heading to their homeroom class. Thankfully, no issues happened when he was gone. He left most of his items in his car since it wasn't logical to bring out all the items into his office. He filled a grocery bag with necessary items such as an onesie, a pacifier, a wrap for him to hold Izuku, formula milk, a bottle, and a diaper or two just in case something happened. He changed Izuku into a onesie to finally get him in something else other than the ragged old gray onesie he had on under his green blanket wrap. He held Izuku in front of him to look at his new child. Oh, what else could Izuku need? Babies need a lot of items, especially when they are growing up. He knew he had to buy a lot of diapers, but what else did he need? His thoughts of what he needed to acquire were interrupted by a smell. He twitched his nose before recoiling away from the source, which happened to be Izuku. With careful thinking, he requested help from two of his students to help deal with the problem at hand. He knew that these two have some experience with children. Since Tensei was absent today, he handpicked two students he knew were responsible enough to take care of Izuku and to deal with the problem. A certain problem he couldn't deal with alone. A diaper change. Why do you think Nedzu called us to his office? Oh God. Do you think he found out about that one time me, you, and Tensei got banned from the supermarket? He can't possibly expel us because of that, can he? Yamada asked his friend loudly, who looked quite done with the conversation already. I don't think he will expel us just because we got banned from one place. At least I hope not, Aizawa thought as he continued talking to his classmate. At most, he would just be calling us over to his office to discuss something to do with school or something. They both walked on to the principal's office. Well, Aizawa actually did more of the walking while he dragged the scared Yamada behind him. Aizawa went to knock on the door before he heard, Aizawa and Yamada, come on in, through the door. Aizawa opened the door while Yamada stood behind him, shivering slightly from the uneasiness of Nedzu's presence. Although, they both straightened up when they saw the confusing sight before them. Nedzu was holding a baby. Nedzu's paws indeed contained a green blanket-wrapped baby in what appeared to be a mint green bear onesie that reminded Yamada of one of the cartoons he watched with his nieces. The baby looked away from Nedzu to the two strangers and did his best to move his hand toward them with a stuffed mouse held tightly between his fingers. Aizawa and Yamada thought at the same time, what in the hell? Hello, students. As you can see, I have come to be a parent on short notice. But I need your help with something I have never had to deal with before in the line of my work, Nedzu started while he lifted up the child slightly. You see, I have no clue how to change a baby's diaper. So I gathered you two since I know you two have experience with acting with small children such as Izuku, and I know you two are the most capable of doing so. Aizawa stared quietly at the baby as the child, apparently, stared right back. Hisashi was relieved that he and his friends weren't in trouble and that he could do something he knew he was good at. Yamada gulped back his disgust as he remembered how bad the smell could be before heading towards the baby. Izuku startled out of Aizawa's gaze to look at the young man with bright yellow hair. Izuku was immediately interested in the bright color and started to reach toward his head. Yamada smiled at the cuteness overload that was the small child before carefully bending down and gathering the young child into his arms, taking him to the corner of the room to get changed. Nedzu and Aizawa stayed back as Yamada broke down the steps of dealing with a dirty diaper while changing Izuku efficiently. Aizawa was plugging his nose from the smell as Nedzu kept a smile on his face as he nodded along to Yamada's instructions. Aizawa also added his own advice from his experience babysitting for his next-door neighbor, such as, make sure they are entertained or else they will go anywhere else to find entertainment, and I mean anywhere. He then continued with a short story of how he prevented a small 1-year-old from crawling under a fence in a garden. Before long, Izuku had a fresh, clean diaper with the old one going straight in the trash. When it was all done, Yamada scratched Izuku's stomach, which in return made Izuku giggle before carefully handing the baby back to his principal. "Thank you so much for both of your help and insight toward taking care of Izuku," Nedzu said as he sat Izuku down in his floor crib because the baby seemed to automatically fall asleep after getting his diaper changed. Aizawa nodded softly, still looking at the baby as Yamada rubbed his hands together. Yamada asked carefully, "Would it be okay if we checked in on Izuku sometimes? Just in case you need help?" Nedzu smiled more genuinely and said, "Of course. As long as it doesn't harm your grades, by all means, you can come in and drop by." Aizawa looked slightly relieved as Yamada smiled brightly. "Thank you." They both continued to the door and were about to shut it behind them when Nedzu spoke up from his seat. "And let this be forgiveness for that stunt you pulled with Ida Tensei's quirk in the supermarket last week." Aizawa and Yamada both froze and nodded fearfully before closing the door. The friends seemed to walk slowly back to their class as Yamada asked what both of them were thinking. How does he always know? From behind the door of the office, Nedzu laughs behind his cup of tea. Nedzu was so done with humans. Maybe not all of them, just the really annoying ones. It hadn't been that long since Nedzu had adopted little Izuku into his personal life. He enlisted his students Yamada Hizashi and Aizawa Shoyuta to help with figuring out how to become a good parent for the small child. After successfully filling out the official paperwork and dealing with the social workers directly, he officially had Izuku as his son. It did take some convincing, but Izuku was now his to call his own. Detective Tsukachi, who he put in charge of finding the father and convicting him of child abandonment, called him only a few days after he took Izuku under his wing to tell him that the father had come willingly to prison. Everything was going great. He even got more things for Izuku to play with. Speaking of Izuku, he personally cleaned out his guest room, which was easy because no one ever volunteered to go over to his place. So, he took the empty room and made it Izuku's room. It was a new crib that was white with intricate flowers engraved into the wood against the wall closest to the door. The empty dresser was filled to the brim with onesies, diapers, socks, blankets, shoes, shirts, pants, and some animal-themed hooded towels he recently brought home. Nedzu had a changing station with a trash can right next to it for easy disposal. The play area consisted of fluffy circle rugs with many soft stuffed animals thrown about. He had a stationary jumper and an activity gym for when he grows a little bigger in the corner. But his favorite addition was the rocking cradle that was soft ivory with a plush inside that he used to rock Izuku to sleep. Nedzu knew what it was like to feel alone and abandoned by humans, so he made a vow to never let that happen again. He created a school for everyone to be safe, and now he had a baby who deserves the love and care that he wasn't shown. Same with his office. He still had the first crib he bought right next to his desk to keep an eye on Izuku while he slept while Nedzu went over his work. He had a few changes of clothes and diapers in his office in case there was an accident. He had a soft rug placed down on his hardwood office floor to allow Izuku to roam free. Of course, he baby-proofed the whole room first. He also had a multitude of pillows, blankets, and stuffed animals around to keep his office from being too boring for Izuku. In short, Nedzu was a proud dad. That is, until the students somehow heard Izuku's cries of laughter outside his office and automatically went to gossip about how Nedzu had a child now. Safe to say, if he ever found the specific person who did it, there would be hell to pay for unintentionally putting his innocent child in danger. Speaking of students, he had to tell them he now has a child, so they could finally let it go. Nedzu planned a short assembly indoors so that the whole school could attend. "Hey, Shoyuta!" Yamada yelled to his dark-haired friend who was resting his head on his desk. "What do you think Nedzu will do about the whole rumor thing? Now everyone knows about the kid." "Lower your voice, Hizashi, or else everyone will know it's not a rumor," Aizawa said, looking up to his friend from his desk. "Nedzu will probably just announce it so that the rumor can go away and he can go back to being in silent peace." Like Aizawa wished he had right now, but ever since the rumor started, everyone had been buzzing with whispers throughout the day. "Hey guys!" The two friends looked over at their friend Ida Tensei as he walked over to them with his lunch bento wrapped up in a light blue bow. He sat down near them before continuing on, Everyone's been going on about just a rumor. I honestly don't care about rumors and only wait for the truth. Oh please. We all know that if it is true, you would want the first look at the little munchkin Ida. The three looked over to see their friend Nemuri Kiyama. She pranced up to them with her long black hair coming down in beach waves. I wouldn't mind taking a look at his baby if he has one, but everyone is going crazy over a stupid rumor. Geez, even if it is true, they don't have to talk about how Nedzu would be a bad dad. Personally, he wouldn't be bad, but maybe just very protective. She shook her head before sitting down near them with her own purple bento. Aizawa and Yamada didn't really want to tell their friends about the baby without Nedzu's permission. Knowing them, they would declare themselves the honorary aunt and uncle of the baby even if they haven't even met him yet. Just when Aizawa was thinking about what to do about the situation, the intercom came on. Oh no, Aizawa and Yamada thought at the same time while their friends and the rest of their classmates looked confused. Attention all students and teachers, report to the inside gymnasium for a special announcement regarding some news I have. Oh hell, Aizawa thought as Nedzu's voice continued on through the speaker. Please start from the upperclassmen down to the freshmen in a calm and orderly manner. Nemuri looked very interested in the announcement. Oh ho, what if he is about to lay a smackdown on the kid who started the rumor? Tensei shook his head as they gathered with their class walking toward the gym. I doubt that. I don't think the principal would do such a thing over a rumor. It's more within his power to unleash his anger toward that student when the teachers go against the student in those battles. They all shivered as they remembered how Nedzu gets when he unleashes high specs. Within 10 minutes, all the classes were gathered in the school gymnasium waiting for whatever the principal had to tell them. They honestly didn't know if this was just a normal school assembly that just wasn't scheduled or an abnormal meeting that was about to rock their whole world. And apparently, it was the latter when Nedzu showed up with tea in one hand and a baby cradled against him in the other. Needless to say, everyone freaked out. Attention students. It has come to my attention that a rumor has spread about me having a child in my office. I don't really know why you would think I would kidnap a child, but I will let you know that I would do no such thing. I found this baby and I have adopted him as my own. He was abandoned just outside the school gates a week ago. I took it upon myself to raise him as my own, and I will have no tolerance towards any behavior of this sort any longer. If you have any suspicion towards me and how I raise my child, say it to my face instead of gossiping behind the closed office door. If you have any problem with that, speak now. Nedzu said this with no trace of a pleasant smile present on his face as Izuku looked up at him with curious eyes. Izuku was wearing a blue onesie with a light brown baby deer that was smelling a pink rose. His little feet were covered by white socks which were embroidered with pink cherry blossoms. In his little hands he held a small light brown teddy bear that's left ear was currently being chewed on lightly. Good. Nedzu looked like one of the moms you would see at a PTA meeting, Aizawa thought as Yamada looked on with a smile. Tensei and Nemuri looked ready to claim their honorary aunt and uncle titles as soon as Nedzu stopped talking. Will there be any further questions on how I raise my son? Nedzu looked on towards the silent crowd. Great, there will be no issues then. Nedzu continued, if there is any further drama or gossip about my skills in parenthood, don't think I will extend any mercy towards you just because you are my student. Punishment is not that far out of reach since my school is meant to be a safe place free of discrimination. Nedzu ended with a sadistic smile. I believe there will be no further problems, yes? The resounding yes from the crowd of students was so loud Nedzu plugged Izuku's ears ahead of time. Nedzu sipped his tea as he spoke from the podium. This issue of gossiping brings up a real topic regarding the offspring of pro-heroes. I will see to it personally that everyone becomes more educated on this topic with your teachers to help you understand the importance, Nedzu added. The mic from the podium picked up on Izuku's soft sounds as he played with the teddy bear in his hands while Nedzu took another long sip of his tea. Nedzu smiled at the gathered crowd before ending with, you are all dismissed to your classrooms now. Except for you, Yukimura. The student in question, who some remembered as the one who spread the rumor, trembled in his seat. Do stay behind, would you? I need to talk to you personally about the 10-page essay you will write about the importance of the truth and how lies can spread into something more heinous. An easy assignment compared to the other punishments than I had in mind. You are lucky that I am letting you off easy this time. Never do something like this again unless you want to face harsher punishment. Nedzu said, smiling as he felt Izuku giggling from his perch against the young principal's chest. Izuku wiggled his stuffed animal in his hand before taking the other ear into his mouth. Most students said a quick prayer for Yukimura while the quartet of friends just shook their heads at him. Geez, he is a second-year student too. You would think he'd know better than to go toe-to-toe against Nedzu. Tensei said offhandedly as they all walked back to their classroom. Serves him right. He shouldn't have done it in the first place, Aizawa stated as he internally sighed in relief that Tensei and Nemuri didn't find out about the connection between him and Yamada already acting like his godparents. I wouldn't want to be him right now. And hey, I was right about him laying a smackdown on the kid who started the whole thing. Nemuri said proudly before a fond smile crossed her face, and that baby was so cute. I wonder if Nedzu will allow us to bring gifts for the little boy. Yeah. I wouldn't be against giving the little fella a few more stuffed animals. Tensei commented. The other three knew that since his little brother was born, he had been dying to let loose his big brother instincts. And since there is a new baby in town, he would pull out all the stops. The day after the assembly, things were pretty much back to normal. Except for Yukimura, who looked thoroughly awake and asleep at the same time while carrying a multitude of books from the public library from class to class. And as always, Aizawa and Yamada were in the middle of math when there was a knock on the door. They both slowly stopped their writing to look at the door. Tensei and Nemuri paused in their work, as well as the whole class turned to look at the door. The door opened to show Nedzu with a baby swaddled in a hands-free scarf attached to the principal's front and car keys in his hand. I need to enlist the help of Aizawa and Yamada on an emergency trip regarding Izuku since I have designated them as the godparents, Nedzu said as Izuku looked around at the scenery of the classroom. What? The whole class shouted, but the most significant was Nemuri and Tensei. Aizawa and Yamada looked at each other and sighed before following their principal out of the school building. The two looked thoroughly confused with what was happening as their principal led them to his car, which was styled after one of the earlier models of a Volkswagen Beetle. Principal Nedzu, where exactly are we going? Yamada asked carefully as the principal climbed up into the car to help buckle Izuku into his dark green car seat in the back seat. The principal only smiled at him before shutting the car door behind him and maneuvering on top of the center console to get to his own spot in the driver's seat. He adjusted the seat to bring him closer to the pedals, made sure his mirrors were in order and made sure Izuku was safe in the back. He rolled down the passenger window slowly to face his two students with the only answer that makes sense in this situation. Nedzu only smiled happily as he called out, "Get in, losers! We're going shopping." Nedzu was fine with no sleep. Yeah, nothing wrong with losing a little sleep, especially when it was because of Izuku. There was no harm in staying awake another hour or two rocking him to sleep in his cradle. No biggie with reading a bedtime story when Izuku wakes up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Surely, no foul in him constantly worrying about Izuku getting hurt because he was in his crawling stage and wanted to head-butted everything he saw. Nope. It's no problem that this has been going on for a few days. No problem at all, Nedzu thought as he looked down at Izuku in the floor crib in his office. He was wearing an old-school superhero-themed onesie with a soft cape attached to it with green and white being its main colors. It took so long for Izuku to tire himself out enough to go to sleep. First off, Izuku woke up crying in the middle of the early morning, which was easily fixed by a quick bottle of warm milk and some walking around while patting his back until he burped. Nedzu woke up again to his alarm, which caused him to wake up Izuku when he was immediately greeted with a smile and the smell of death coming from his diaper. After the diaper change, he got his work suitcase and Izuku's baby bag ready before he was greeted by a wail from Izuku. He looked down to see Izuku trying to clutch his head from the small pain he experienced from bumping his forehead into the only not baby-proofed spot in his house. He swooped down to take the crying child in his arms while bouncing him slightly, shushing him quietly while rubbing his back with his other hand. From that fiasco onto the next, when he was halfway to work when he realized he left not only Izuku's favorite toy that he couldn't possibly fall asleep without, but also his paperwork that he finished from last night. Nedzu had to drive all the way back, pick up the items, and then wiggle back into the driver's seat before heading double time to UA. Which reminds him of the apology letter he needs to write to that poor electrician who was having just a lovely day before Nedzu stormed into him. Safe to say, he might need to send some compensation from the utter scare he caused the worker to experience. And Nedzu would think that at least at work, he would be safe. Ha ha ha. Oh, how the universe really hated him sometimes. Nedzu had to deal with a supposed gas leak that needed to be fixed fast, only for the professionals to show up and say it was just overheated water that somehow intersected with the garbage disposal smell. Which made their pay doubled because they were only supposed to fix a leak, not fix up a whole system of pipes. And then he had to deal with the electric company calling about how he apparently traumatized one of their workers. He talked down their whole lawsuit thing pretty quickly, but that meant he really needed to put compensation in his apology letter to pay for a few therapy lessons. Then he had to go through paperwork, which was always so fun to deal with. Then, for a moment there was peace and calm in his office for once in the past 4 hours since he woke up from his nearly non-existent sleep. For a split second he thought, this is nice. He was instantly shocked out of that thought since he saw Izuku heading toward the bookshelf. Which would have been fine until he realized the snow globe he bought while he was on one of his very few vacations was a little too close to the edge. He rushed over as soon as Izuku slightly bumped into it. Good news, he caught the globe. Bad news, Izuku was crying again. Nedzu bit back his inner turmoil into a smile as he picked up Izuku and settled him down. This incident caused him to completely stop his work to watch as Izuku literally avoided every single safe space he saw and headed toward any dangerous spots he could reach. He was like a danger magnet. 2 hours later, Izuku finally went to sleep after eating his applesauce. Lunchtime, Nedzu thought as he remembered the students in the school and looked down at the papers before him with sad eyes. He turned his attention back to his self-bought, #1 dad cup. I wish I knew how to quit you, Nedzu lamented to his teacup containing his 5th cup of caffeinated Earl Grey which he quickly chugged before continuing with his endless amount of paperwork. He peeked over at Izuku's sleeping form, silently wishing for him to stay just like that for a while. I still can't believe Nedzu took you guys shopping in the middle of class. Nemuri pouted as she picked at some pork with her chopsticks. It was less shopping with us and more using us as help to shop for Izuku. Hisashi said. It was more of us reaching the places he couldn't get to than anything else, Hisashi thought to himself. The shopping trip itself was eventful. Especially when everyone saw 2 high school students with their principal carrying a baby across his chest as he dragged the 2 towards the baby section. He took some of their advice while picking certain foods and drinks that were helpful toward a baby's growth. But of course, when they arrived back in time for lunch, their 2 other friends took one look at them and started to hammer them with questions. Which made Hisashi pull one of the oldest tricks in the book. Hisashi pointed behind them, said, "Hey, what's over there?" Before taking off with such speed even Tensei couldn't stand a chance. Well, he technically could chase after him, but they had Aizawa with them which was all they really needed to begin their interrogation. How long have you known? Nemuri asked. The same day he found him, Aizawa responded. How come you didn't tell us? Tensei followed up. It was a secret between the principal and us. If we would have told you, all 4 of us would probably have the same punishment that Yukishima had to go through. Aizawa said with his dark eyes looking more bored with every word. Nemur questioned, how do we get on this? Why do you want to? Aizawa asked. Why wouldn't we? Tensei answered. Look, I'm a great older brother to Tenya, so I can definitely help out the most with how to take care of kids like Izuku because he is around the same age as Tenya. I'm sure that I can help out. I will do it in any way that I can. Aizawa looked to Nemuri to find out her answer. I always wanted to spoil a kid and be the cool aunt. And Izuku looks like he deserves to be spoiled, especially by the most awesome aunt that he could ever have. At the end of their little interrogation, they decided amongst themselves to try to convince Nedzu to make them the honorary aunt and uncle. So here the 2 were, having sneaked up to his office after they finished their lunch. So what do we do to convince him to make us part of the family? Tensei quietly asked Nemuri as they both walked toward the office door. I don't really know. I'm hoping he could just give us babysitter privileges, and at least allow us to give him a few gifts. And then sooner or later we will be the cool influences on him, Nemuri answered before reaching out to knock. I know it's you two, come on in, Nedzu answered, but he sounded tired. The two looked at each other before opening the door to his office, only to gape at the utter mess on the floor, a pile of books that looked like they fell from the bookshelf to the ground, and stuffed animals were strewn all over the room. Izuku was babbling from his crib. All the while their principal had his head down in his arms sitting at his office desk. What brings you two here? Nedzu said with his head still resting within his paws. Izuku gurgled a happy greeting from his crib as his limbs flailed a little bit towards them. Shocked, Tensei cleared his throat. Well, we were both wondering if you would consider us being an aunt and uncle to Izuku. We don't even have to have that certain title, Nemuri continued on. We just want to give him little gifts and maybe babysit once in a while if you are willing. Nedzu lifted his head. Why would I let you sit on Izuku? No. Babysit just means watching over a baby while the parent goes away for some time. Tensei explained, fearing what Nedzu would do. Nedzu lifted his head full from his paws and looked at Izuku. He looked back at his student. If I agree, would that mean you will take care of Izuku while I rest? Well, Nemuri started. Yes. Nedzu said smiling, you two can look over Izuku after school today. But you need Hisashi and Aizawa to assist since Izuku is already familiar with them. Great, it's settled then. You will watch over him after school, fantastic. Nemuri and Tensei stared for a moment at the pure joy their principal had on his face. Or was it his sadistic joy that he uses when he gets a chance at fighting the students during the teacher battle exams? Either way, they succeeded in getting to have the cute child all to themselves. We won't let you down, sir. Tensei started before exiting the office with Nemuri next to him. Nedzu smiled as he could already guess what was going to happen when they would look over his little angel. Oh, this is going to be fun, Nedzu said smiling at Izuku, which gladly earned him a smile back. I can't believe you talked us into this, Aizawa blankly said as he, Hisashi, Nemuri, and Tensei headed to Nedzu's house. Apparently, after offering one of their houses for the babysitting, Nedzu refused and offered up his own since Izuku was more familiar with the layout. It was less talking and more dragging us into their own scheme, Hisashi muttered to Aizawa as they followed behind the obviously too happy of a pair. They arrived at the door, about to knock when it opened to Nedzu holding Izuku. Nedzu had an overnight bag held in his right arm with Izuku in his left. Nedzu handed Izuku to Tensei before waving his little paw goodbye at Izuku. I'll be back soon, my little mouse, Nedzu whispered to the curly-haired child before he turned to his students. I have all the materials inside. There is a list with his schedule and where things are located. I left some money for you four to get pizza. If there is an emergency, don't call me, I know what will happen before it does. There are several instructions for each task, no problems. You four have fun. Stay out of my room, I will know if there was any attempt to cross into it, Nedzu explained before walking off toward the elevator. When Hisashi was watching his principal walk down the hall, he noticed his different attire. Instead of a suit and tie, he had on a rather casual white shirt with black jeans. Oh wait, those were still his dress pants. Curious, Hisashi called out to Nedzu, Hey, what are you doing while we watch Izuku? Are you going to go watch a movie or something? Oh goodness no. I'm going to find the road to El Dorado. What on earth do you think I'm doing? I'm going to sleep. Nedzu said over his shoulder before turning the corner toward the elevator. The four were stunned at his response before looking down at the child they were supposed to look after for what seemed like overnight. Thank God they had nothing planned and for the fact that tomorrow they were off of school. The four pairs of eyes looked down at the small, smiling child. This will be so much fun. After about 2 hours of watching Disney movies and eating pizza, Aizawa decided to check certain tasks off the checklist. Let's see, Izuku has already had his bottle. He already had a bath, a diaper change, and his meal of mashed baby foods. We already had dinner, so let's clean up before getting ready for our next task. Aizawa stated, already picking up the empty pizza boxes and throwing them in the trash. His friends followed his actions since Izuku was distracted by Cinderella. They all went to the kitchen as Izuku bounced happily upon seeing the mice fix up Cinderella's dress. He was wearing a soft blue onesie with an embroidered koi fish on his chest. In his hands was a small sloth plushie that Izuku hugged tightly to himself as the pink dress was being made by the army of kind mice. Okay, our last thing is getting Izuku ready for bed. He said that we might need to play with him for a little while before Izuku either gets tired from loss of energy or bored. Aizawa said, looking at his friends. That seems simple enough. Nemuri said as she cracked her knuckles. Aizawa looked back at the paper, seeming to notice a little note Nedzu made in red pen. He looked at the note and paled. Remember not to leave Izuku alone for even the tiniest of time. He is in his crawling phase and seemingly loves to hide. I think it happened when I showed him that one Disney movie with the mice making that dress. It seems he loves to pretend to be one of the mice, which is adorable when you think about it, but not when he disappears. Aizawa immediately rushed over to the couch in the living room, leaving his confused friends behind. The three friends heard an angry shout, "Son of a biscuit," and rushed over to find an annoyed Aizawa and an empty couch. The three friends were freaked out as Aizawa remained the leader. You know the leader. Supposed to remain calm in these kinds of situations. Find Izuku before we get killed. Aizawa yelled at them. Aizawa searched the living room, Hizashi checked Izuku's bedroom, Tensei checked out the two bathrooms, and Nemuri checked the kitchen. There was no sign of him. He has got to be around here somewhere. Check the lists and see if he said anything about where Izuku likes to hide or something like that. Nemuri said frantically as she pointed to Tensei to check the lists that Nedzu left behind. There is nothing about his favorite place to hide. It just says his favorite food and toy, and he already took his favorite stuffed animal with him. There is no way to bait him out. Even if we got the food, he will still be full from earlier, Tensei answered with the list clutched in his hand. The only place we haven't checked is Nedzu's room, but it is still locked, so there is no way he is in there. Hizashi said, looking scared at the fact they might have lost Izuku. Let's check the rooms again. I'll take Izuku's room, Hizashi will take the kitchen, Nemuri, you look in the bathrooms again, and Tensei will take the living room. Leave no space unchecked. We have to find him before he hurts himself. Aizawa yelled, rushing into Izuku's room. The four friends were filling with more and more dread as they looked in every place they could find. There were no signs he had been in the bathrooms or kitchen at all. And their only trace in the living room if the fact he was there last time they saw him. They were losing hope and gaining fear as they thought that maybe they would have to check Nedzu's room. I found him, Aizawa said as he looked inside Izuku's closet. Izuku's closet was open, but no one checked inside to see that Izuku had crawled his way to the back of the closet where there was a pile of soft blankets. Izuku had crawled from the living room to his own bedroom to go to sleep. Aizawa smiled at the headache-inducing baby as he softly breathed in a deep slumber. Aizawa picked him up gently before carrying him to his crib. Thankfully, Izuku didn't wake up. The three other teenagers appeared at the door, saw Izuku sleeping, and fell to the ground exhausted. I haven't had a scare like that since. Ever, actually, Tensei breathed, lying on the ground, looking up at the painted ceiling with glow-in-the-dark stars. Yeah. Nemuri and Hizashi agreed as they yawned. I'm going to keep an eye on Izuku while he sleeps. Aizawa whispered slowly as he slumped down in the padded rocking chair overlooking the crib. It was a bit small with his tall figure, but he made it work. His head resting against his shoulder as sleep overtook him. Nedzu smiled at the sight before him with a well-rested mind. The four teenagers had passed out from the overexertion of chasing Izuku around the house. Their bodies were all around the crib, so Nedzu made sure to step carefully as he walked toward Izuku. Izuku was wide awake, so when he saw his papa he reached out his hands toward him. He smiled and took the child from the crib before carefully moving around the bodies once again. He paused at the door. Sleep tight, children, Nedzu said, smiling at the four passed-out teenagers before exiting Izuku's room with a giggling Izuku slightly bouncing in his arm. I wonder how long it will take them to notice that Izuku's closet has a mini passageway to my room. Nedzu thought with a smiling Izuku staring up at him. He tickled Izuku's belly, making him giggle up at Nedzu with bright eyes. Nedzu was to attend a meeting with all the principals of the hero school in Japan in less than a day. Normally, he would just go to the meeting without a second thought, but since he had Izuku to take care of, all his normal plans and schedules had gone out the window to care for his little mouse. Which was fitting because he dressed Izuku in a white mouse onesie with pink socks today. He loved the fact he could dress up his son in any onesie he wanted to. Maybe he would choose a small tuxedo next time so they could have matching formal wear. Nedzu had embraced the crawling stage by giving him that onesie. And now after some time, Izuku had let up on his crawling adventures to just crawl over to his toys. The issue was that Izuku has started teething recently. When he says recently, he means that morning, which means that he has to be gone for a few days when Izuku's teething stage has just begun. Which means he had to get a nanny or four for a few days until he came back. He was sure he could bend the rules a little bit, as long as the 4 nannies did their schoolwork while they were away from school. Nedzu needed to remind himself to buy some futons, so they didn't sleep on the floor again. Izuku babbled from his floor crib with a cold, teething toy in his mouth. Nedzu smiled down at him. "Hello, little mouse. Papa is going to have to go away soon, but don't worry. Your nannies will take good care of you, especially since I'm in charge of whether they get expelled or not." Izuku giggled. "Now, it's time to make a list for them to follow to heart this time, and a grocery list to make sure they don't raid my special snacks. I can't believe Nedzu is letting us out of school for a few days just to take care of Izuku." Hizashi yelled at his friends, pumped at the chance. Small bags of clothes and schoolwork adorned his arms as well as his classmates. "Seriously? Don't you remember the last time? You know, when we lost Izuku?" Aizawa deadpanned as he walked with his friends to Nedzu's room. "Lighten up. We found him in the end anyway, didn't we? What's the worst that could happen now?" Nemuri said as she bumped her arm playfully against Aizawa. "Anything worse can happen now." Aizawa grumbled. The 3 nannies walked to the room with conflicting thoughts in their head. Tensei couldn't make it since he had to take care of Tenya, but he promised to help them with homework and any baby tips as long as they sent him cute pictures of Izuku with Nedzu's permission. The trio's parents agreed to the 3-day weekend babysitting sleepover since they knew it would teach them responsibility from taking care of a baby, and they were still going to do their homework. Nedzu came through the door when they were still a few feet from it. His face was less tired, but more sad than last time the teens watched over Izuku. He held his son close. "See you soon, my little mouse. I'll be back before you know it." Izuku babbled in his little mouse onesie. Nedzu handed Izuku to Aizawa carefully. "Everything you need should be in there. I have $20 a day for your food budget, anything else will be out of your pocket. There is an updated list on the fridge. I went ahead and purchased some food just in case." Nedzu waved goodbye to his students. "Just so 3 know, he has begun his teething stage, so have fun." He ended with a more sadistic smile. As Nedzu walked off, Aizawa thought to himself, "Son of butternut squash, not again." Everything was going smoothly. Was what a crazy person would say. After Nedzu had left, Aizawa and Hizashi read the list of things to do out loud as Nemuri kept Izuku in her arms in the living room. They skimmed through the normal routine before heading to the bottom. P.S. Izuku is very picky when teething. I found out this morning when trying to figure out what he wanted to be his teething toy. I tried multiple methods before landing on his cold toy. He specifically only likes certain things to chew on, this being one of the 3. He will drool and get grumpy. Be prepared, students. Okay, so as long as we have the teething toy, we will be fine, right? Hizashi said before looking down at Izuku chewing on his fist. "Where the hell is the teething toy?" Aizawa flipped the page over. "PPS. When I was writing this list, I noticed Izuku no longer had his toy. I haven't a clue where it is, but you 3 will be showing at the door any minute, so no time for a backup plan. Thank goodness. I have all the other methods present in the kitchen. Knock yourselves out." Aizawa grumbled and ran his hands over his face. Nemuri went to ask what was wrong, and the 3 days of hell started when Izuku opened his mouth in a weak wail. First method, chilled spoon. Hisashi, what the hell? Aizawa asked, yelling at the blonde, who held the cold spoon in his hands like a stabbing tool. I put the spoon in the freezer, was I not supposed to? Hisashi yelled back at his friend, both parties trying to hear each other over the wails of the infant that was being held by Nemuri. Nemuri Whisper yelled at him, you were supposed to put it in the fridge and you weren't. Supposed to put it in wet. Why not? Hisashi asked, panic and frustration rising. Aizawa raised an eyebrow before holding up a cold stainless steel spoon covered in ice that gets jagged in some spots. Gee, I don't know. First method, chilled spoon failed. Second method, fingers. Ow, 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 ow. Hisashi whimpered while his newly cleaned fingers were getting chewed on. Hey Hisashi, can you feel his little teeth? Nemuri asked, hoping this would work. Oh, did I feel it? And I don't like it, Hisashi replied, grimacing. Izuku started to get irritated with the finger in his mouth, so Izuku grabbed Hisashi's finger and removed it, frowning and whimpering softly. Second method, finger failed. Third method, teething gel. It was after dinner, and the three had already finished up their homework for that day. They even did tomorrow's ahead of time since they had some quiet time at last. I can't believe Aizawa found the answer, Nemuri grumbled as she looked at the peacefully slumbering Izuku laying on top of a napping Aizawa on his futon. Hisashi placed a blanket over the two before climbing into his own futon. Turns out, the teething gel really helped Izuku calm down, especially since Aizawa rubbed his gums afterward. Nemuri glanced at her phone. The digital clock read 9. It took 4 hours for Izuku to fully stop crying. And this was just the first day. Hopefully, the gel would work again tomorrow. Third method, teething gel, success. Fourth method, freezing a washcloth. Apparently, the teething gel only worked when Izuku was tired. As soon as Aizawa went to place it on his gums in the morning, Izuku threw the squeeze container on the ground. Not wanting to fight, the others turned to alternatives. Nemuri froze one of the washcloths in the fridge and one in the freezer. Both of them were dry. It seemed to work until lunch when Izuku threw the washcloth at Nemuri's face when he was done chewing on it. They tried the backup from the freezer, but it was too hard for Izuku. Fourth method, freeze a washcloth failed. Fifth method, peeled ginger root. This time, they called in the favor of Tensei, who sneaked his phone into class. Tensei texted them that Tenya seemed to like peeled ginger roots to help with his teething problems. So they tried that. Nedzu had a few peeled ginger roots in his cabinet. Hisashi guessed that it must be because he tried one of these methods before, and he prayed to whatever god was close enough that this was one he liked. Nope. Izuku threw the ginger root away as soon as Hisashi placed it in Izuku's mouth. Hisashi's hope was crushed as he watched the ginger root fall to the floor. Fifth method, ginger root failed. Sixth method, bath and face massage. It was late and close to Izuku's bedtime. Izuku was still trying to teeth by chewing on his onesie while the three of them kept a close eye on him while they ate pizza again for dinner. Aizawa was the first to finish and brought Izuku to the bathroom to get him cleaned up for bed. Aizawa succeeded in getting Izuku in a good mood by making bubbles while he bathed him. When he was dressed for bedtime, he gently massaged Izuku's little cheeks like his mother used to do for him when he was young. Izuku was smiling at him while slowly going to sleep. Aizawa placed a small amount of the teething gel on his gums before laying him down in his crib. Before long, Izuku was out cold. Sixth method, bath and face massage success. Aizawa, 2. Hisashi, 0. Nemuri, 0. Seventh method, vanilla extract. Bath time, however, was just a short fix. And when Aizawa tried to rub on his little baby cheeks again, Izuku got grumpy. He sighed and wiped the drool from Izuku's mouth using a tissue. Nemuri tried a trick that her mother did to her when she was little. She found some vanilla extract and put it on a cotton swab. Say Izuku, Nemuri said cheerfully. Izuku looked at the short white wand strangely, opening his mouth slowly. She coated his gums with the extract before pulling back. Izuku seemed to taste the overwhelming vanilla but otherwise stayed calm. She finally got a point. But after lunch, he got grumpy again. The vanilla didn't work a second time since Izuku wouldn't allow the cotton swab near his mouth without causing a fuss. Seventh method, vanilla extract failed. Eighth method, cucumber slices. Hisashi thought of a brilliant plan when he was making a sandwich. He pulled out a piece of cucumber for Izuku to chew. Izuku was quite happy with the cool green slice for a while, before he started to wail again. Nemuri and Hisashi sighed, resting their heads in their hands while Aizawa picked up Izuku. Aizawa bounced the child lightly, trying to soothe him. Eighth method, cucumber slices failed. Aizawa was bouncing Izuku in his arms as he walked back and forth in his room. He rubbed Izuku's back and hushed him softly. Izuku's cries weren't as loud as before, but he was still worried. He wiped the drool away from Izuku's mouth again, but then he noticed something on Izuku's dresser. Something that looked like a teething toy. Son of a butternutter. Ninth method, teething toy, successful. Nedzu walked in to see Aizawa on the couch holding a fed, dressed, diaper changed, and happy baby bouncing on his leg. Izuku had his spare teething toy in his mouth. Nedzu wondered how long it took them to find it, but seeing their tired faces he could only imagine it was pretty recently. Nemuri and Hisashi said goodbye before they left, very tired. Aizawa stayed behind a few minutes to give Nedzu an update on the methods they tried out and how Izuku has been over the past few days. Izuku clung to his father while chewing on his giraffe teething toy. He wore a mint green and white striped onesie with a bunny tail on his butt. Aizawa smiled, seeing Izuku so at ease before taking his leave as well. It might have been a hard few days, but Izuku was worth it. Nedzu turned to his son once all the teens were gone for the night. He smiled softly at his son's already drooping eyes. He carried him gently to his room and laid him down in his rocking cradle. He slowly rocked him as he hummed a song that they saw in one of those Disney movies Izuku loves so much. Izuku fell asleep slowly with the embrace of his father's warm presence and calm voice. Nedzu was experiencing parental excitement. Izuku has been babbling more often lately. Nedzu thinks that soon Izuku will say his first words. He watched Izuku play on the floor of his office on a fluffy rug. Izuku was dressed in his favorite dinosaur-themed onesie. He was playing with a woven yarn octopus plush that was about the same size as him. They had matching smiles as Izuku rolled on the floor, holding onto 3 of the tentacles. Izuku was getting older, and that both excited and terrified Nedzu. By his deductions, Izuku will say his first words soon. He was beyond happy. His face held a big smile when he walked into the building that morning. He supposed it was an unusual sight since his faculty looked terrified. Screw them, I'm happy, Nedzu thought as he watched his little mouse crawl around with his octopus held in his hands. He knows that Izuku's first words would be soon since a few days ago he had started to mumble and babble different sounds to him. He was about to wake Izuku up this morning only to be greeted with a "Ba" from a wide-awake Izuku in his crib. Nedzu had laughed in joy, and his neighbors were fearing for their lives at the sound. He checked the time on his clock. It was time for the school announcements. He grabbed the microphone for the intercom and pressed the button to turn it on. I still can't believe it was that difficult for you guys to figure out what Izuku liked when he began teething? Tensei asked. I mean, how? I don't know, dude. But Izuku is picky and Nedzu likes to watch us suffer. Nemuri said with her face against her desk. Aizawa elbowed Hisashi to get his attention for the morning announcements. Good afternoon, hero students of Class 1A and 1B, you may now use Training Area Beta again since reconstruction is over. Now Class 1C, General Education. The sound of shuffling paper and Nedzu's amused giggle came over the speaker, and the sound of Izuku's babbling spread through the school. Ba, pa, na. Everyone awed at the cuteness of the child's voice, even Yukimura, who was still quite traumatized over the punishment he'd received. The group of 4 smiled at the noises Izuku was making before Nedzu continued on. That is all for today, Nedzu finished. Have a good afternoon. As he was turning it off, the whole school heard a cute babble of "Bae." The group of friends looked back at each other. Let me guess, you all want to go see Izuku during lunch break? Aizawa sighed. The rest of the group nodded in unison. Aizawa didn't want to admit he was excited, but he was. Seeing Izuku was always fun. Nedzu had a feeling that Izuku would say his first words today. Izuku had been babbling a lot since he turned off the intercom while he was playing with his toys. Nedzu had a smile on his face while doing some paperwork. Unfortunately, Nedzu has to go to a quick meeting with the faculty during lunch break. Apparently, a child during the meeting was distracting and unprofessional. Nedzu had to make a tough decision and exclude Izuku from the next meeting lest his child distract from the topics at hand. Nedzu checked the cameras to see his 4 favorite babysitters making their way toward his office. Ooh, perfect timing. The 4 teenagers hesitantly entered Nedzu's office. Izuku looked up at the door and smiled. He started to babble and reach out his hands at the 4 while Nedzu smiled. "Hello, students. What a pleasant surprise," Nedzu said as he hopped off his office chair to go greet them at the door. Aizawa already had a suspicion that they would be staying a little longer than anticipated. He narrowed his eyes as Nedzu approached Tensei. "Nice to see you. Since you are here, you wouldn't mind watching Izuku during the lunch break while I go to a meeting, right?" "Great. See you," Nedzu rambled before briskly walking out the door. Aizawa sighed as he rubbed his temples. "Great. I should have known this would happen." Izuku seemed to giggle at Aizawa's annoyance with the whole situation. "Wonderful. Now Izuku's laughing at my pain." Tensei seemed to be excited about the opportunity to care for Izuku since he missed out last time. "Hey, Izuku. How have you been, little guy?" Tensei asked, approaching slowly with a smile on his face. He crouched down to look at Izuku, who was smiling behind his octopus toy. "I see you got a new toy. It looks so colorful." The 3 shrugged at the other's brotherly behavior and joined him on the floor. They had about 30 minutes to have fun with little Izuku before Nedzu came back. They pulled out all the stops. Hizashi hummed songs while Nemuri made one of his dolls dance along, and Tensei made 2 toys race against each other with Aizawa as the begrudging judge of who won. Eventually, it was time for the group to head back to class. "All right, little man, Nedzu will be back soon to see you," Nemuri said, patting Izuku on the head. "Papa." Izuku replied with a bright smile, looking back at the 4 from the picture he was staring at. "Did he just dash?" Tensei started to ask. "Say his first words without Nedzu present?" "Yes, he did, and now our principal is going to kill us from jealousy," Aizawa said fearfully. "Oh no, what are we going to do?" Nemuri worried. "Nothing. Nothing. We do nothing," Aizawa replied. "What?" Hizashi asked with a shocked expression. "His first words were Papa. So when he sees Nedzu, he will say Papa again. Nedzu won't know unless he has a camera somewhere in here. But hey, maybe he will be too happy to notice," Aizawa explained. "He is coming down the hall now. Let's say goodbye, and let Nedzu hear his child say his first words," Nemuri decided. They all nodded before saying a quick goodbye to Izuku, which was rewarded with a small wave. They exited the room at the same time Nedzu walked in. They said hello and goodbye to their principal before heading to their class. Nedzu waved goodbye to the backs of his students before turning around and closing the door behind him. He walked to his desk while looking at Izuku. He was playing with his zebra plush. "Ah, I remember when I got him that toy," Nedzu thought, not paying attention to what was in front of him. His toe hit the desk leg hard. "OW sheet," Nedzu yelled out before clutching his foot paw. "Sheet," Izuku repeated after his father. "I'm a terrible father," Nedzu thought to himself before robotically sitting down at his desk chair. He rested his head on the desk's surface while he listened to Izuku's laughing. Izuku's sound of laughter and clapping did nothing to drown out the feeling of shame that the principal was currently going through. So how do you think Nedzu reacted when Izuku called him Papa? Tensei wondered with excitement in his voice as they went to check on the principal and Izuku at the end of the school day. "Oh, I'm sure he was happier than he has ever been," Hizashi replied with a smile on his face before opening the office door. "Hey, Principal Nedzu, just checking in dash." The office was quiet except for Izuku's babbling sounds. They looked to their principal to see him sitting lifelessly at his desk. Principal Nedzu? What's wrong?" Nemuri asked carefully. "I'm a terrible father. I made Izuku's first word a curse word." Nedzu bemoaned. "What? His first word was a curse word? But his first word was dash." Hizashi started before Aizawa slapped a hand over his mouth again. What? A moment of silence followed. Well, Principal Nedzu, Izuku's actual first words were dash. Aizawa explained to Nedzu's oddly calm smiling face. Papa! Izuku called, smiling when he got his father's attention. Clapping, he repeated, Papa! Papa! Nedzu smiled softly at the sight of his little child calling out to him. Oh, my precious little mouse, Nedzu whispered before taking Izuku up into his arms. Yeah. We didn't tell you because we figured that Izuku would say it as soon as you come back. But it appears it didn't happen like the way we thought it would. So we all apologize, Tensei responded before the four bowed in apology. Oh, thank goodness. That means I have a video of it. Nedzu replied happily before tickling Izuku on his tummy. What do you mean? Do you have cameras in your office? Hizashi asked with a sweat bead rolling down his forehead. Oh please, I have cameras all over the school in every room, complete with different angles and full audio. Nedzu responded casually, all his attention on his son. Except for more private areas such as the restrooms, of course. Man, that is unnerving, the four thought to themselves. A happy family of 2. Well, 6 if you counted the honorary aunts and uncles, Nedzu thought. Nedzu realized that Izuku doesn't really have any friends his own age. The only friends he has are his stuffed animals and his family. So, Nedzu, the great father that he is, decides that it is time for Izuku to make a friend his own age. It didn't take much deliberation to decide that Tensei's younger brother, Tenya, would be perfect. Izuku is already familiar with Tensei, and apparently, Tenya didn't have many friends his own age either. Nedzu looked over to Izuku who was wearing a short-sleeved black shirt with red shorts. The black shirt had a design of one of the top 10 heroes at that moment. And on his feet were bright white shoes that lit up every time he took a step. The shoes were Izuku's favorite thing at the moment since he couldn't stop staring down at them, stomping his feet to cause them to light up again. Nedzu looked over to Izuku. He hopes the playdate this weekend goes smoothly. Izuku's first playdate? Hell yeah, I'll be there, Nemuri stated, downing her drink in one go. Alright, Tensei chuckled. Hey, do you guys want to come too? We can't, Hizashi grumbled, staring dejectedly down at the table. Aizawa explained, we have to work on a project on hero history. We are supposed to do research on heroes from about 100 years ago or so that made an impact on society in some way. But we have to get all our sources this weekend. And it is ridiculously hard to find a hero that someone else in the class isn't already doing, Hizashi groaned with his face now smushed against the table. Relax, Hizashi, Aizawa said. He turns his attention to the other two. I want as many pictures and videos of Izuku as you can get. Roger that, Nemuri saluted. Sunday arrived fast. Aizawa and Yamada were away at a public library scouring the computers and books desperately searching for a hero to do their report on. Meanwhile, Nemuri was led into Nedzu's apartment with Tensei and his brother right behind her. Nedzu guided the three inside where they saw Izuku laying on the floor in the living room with a coloring book set in front of him. What are doing, bud? Nemuri asked, crouching down beside Izuku. Color. Izuku replied loudly, showing the bright colors that the marker had left all over his hands. Nemuri giggled at the display, and Tenya peeked out from behind his older brother's legs. Izuku's attention drifted to Tenya, and reached out his hand and waved at the other boy. Tenya's eyes brightened and he waved back at the other boy. Tensei noticed this and introduced the two. Tenya, this is Izuku. Izuku, this is my little brother Tenya. Hi, Izuku greeted. Hello, Tenya replied quietly while his brother guided him to Izuku. Tenya reached out his hand towards the other boy for a handshake before Izuku pulled him into a hug. Tenya froze up momentarily before he relaxed into the hug. Nemuri was taking a video of the whole thing. Aizawa and Yamada are going to be so jealous. I know, right? Tensei whispered back to her. Izuku was wearing his favorite light-up shoes which he was now showing to Tenya excitedly. Tensei backed off, allowing the two to sit together as Izuku showed Tenya his coloring book and markers. Tenya picked up a blue marker and started to draw on one page as Izuku scribbled on the other. Nemuri sat on the couch to watch the television while the two kids colored. Tensei sat on the other side of the couch, watching them draw calmly while Nedzu worked on school-related stuff for tomorrow behind them. It wasn't long before Tensei turned his attention to the television while Izuku continued coloring with Tenya. Izuku wanted to show Tenya his favorite stuffed octopus toy. He looked around to see where he left it, finding it laying over the chair next to the couch. "Be back," Izuku whispered to Tenya, who looked confused. Izuku started to crawl towards his toy before realizing that his toy was laying on top of the chair, out of his reach. He furrowed his brow, trying to reach for one of the knitted tentacles. Nemuri glanced over to Izuku. Tensei, look." Tensei looked to where Nemuri pointed to see Izuku trying to stand up. Nemuri quickly took out her phone to start recording a video while Nedzu came around the couch to get a closer look. The three didn't dare to stop Izuku as he started to stand up on his little legs. "Come on, Squirt," Tensei encouraged while Tenya watched his friend. Izuku used the chair as something to lean on while he grabbed his toy from the top of the chair. He stumbled a bit when he took his hand from the chair. Nedzu walked around the couch to the other side to encourage Izuku. "Come here, little mouse," Nedzu called, making grabby hands towards his child. "Papa," Izuku mumbled as one of his arms gripped his toy. He slowly and unsteadily made his way to Nedzu before finally collapsing into a hug. "I got all of it on camera," Nemuri cheered while Tensei looked emotional. "So did I," Nedzu stated proudly. "But please send me that video since your point of view is closer than the security cameras in my house." "Cameras? Oh yes, I got them installed shortly after everyone stayed overnight to babysit," Nedzu added, which made the two friends look at each other in slight fear. "How much does he see? How much does he know?" The playdate yesterday was adorable. And it was so cute when Izuku called Tenya, Tenchin, and then Tenya called him Aishin, Tenya said. Hisashi groaned into his hands. "I can't believe we missed Izuku's first steps. Why couldn't we be there?" "We didn't want to fail our project," Aizawa sighed. Hisashi hadn't stopped complaining since Nemuri had sent the video of Izuku walking. "Speaking of, thank you for sending the video of him walking to us." "No problem," Nemuri smiled, leaning back in her chair. Tensei continued to eat his fruit salad in silence while Hisashi was still talking about how he wished he had been there in person to witness the event. "It was so cute." Hisashi sobbed dramatically. His little bitty baby arms were wrapped around his little toy, and those little bitty legs were. Hisashi pauses before crying out, "Why? Why weren't we there?" Aizawa canceled his quirk just in time so that they all didn't bleed from the ears. It was family day today. Everyone's family was able to come to UA to spend some time with their child at the school campus. Aizawa's parents couldn't make it because of their jobs, but that left him with the duty to watch over Izuku while Nedzu had to take care of preparations for dealing with the families. Hisashi's parents were chatting with Nemuri's parents. Tensei's parents were standing around with him and Tenya. Everyone else and their parents were talking to them about their school life. Some showed their parents their teachers and others showed them around the building. Aizawa was in the principal's office watching as Izuku's crawled around. He watched as Izuku stood up several times and took a few steps toward his toys only to fall back down to his knees. He smiled as he remembered that Nedzu and them witnessed his first steps a few days ago. They were going to check on Nedzu, but they were mostly there to check on Izuku. They opened the door to see Nedzu kneeling on the floor with Izuku struggling to get up. They kept silent as Nedzu encouraged Izuku to walk with confidence. Izuku giggled as he finally stood up. Tensei and Hisashi were silently freaking out while Nemuri was smiling so big at the adorable Izuku stumbling toward his papa. Aizawa watched as Nedzu welcomed a slow-walking Izuku into his waiting arms. Nedzu hugged him and lifted him up as soon as Izuku was close to him. They are celebrated as Izuku smiled happily repeating, "Papa! Papa! Again!" That was a happy memory he was probably going to remember forever. Especially since Nedzu has it all recorded from the security cameras and Nemuri snuck in a closer video. He thinks she even took some pictures. But since then Izuku has been walking a little better each day. He wonders if Izuku will just disappear from sight if he takes his eyes off of him. It had been a month since he started talking, but he was already walking. The office door opened slightly to reveal his 3 friends without their parents. Our parents all met each other and are chatting up a storm right now outside the cafeteria. How's it hanging with little Izuku? Everything is good for once. He has been playing with his toys since I got here, Aizawa explained looking at his friends. Well, where is he? Tensei asked, receiving a confused look from Aizawa. What do you mean? He's right there, Aizawa said as he pointed to where he last saw Izuku. But his fingers showed nothing but empty space and a forgotten toy lying on the ground. Where did he go? Hisashi called out loudly in confusion. The friends hurriedly looked around the office to see no sign of the green-haired boy, not behind the desk, not next to his toys, not next to the wide-open door. Son of a honey bun! Aizawa yelled in frustration at seeing where Izuku might have gone. Why did you leave the door open? I thought I did. Nemuri replied, I didn't close it all the way, but I didn't leave it wide open like that. Oh dear, this is bad, Tensei said after he walked up to the empty doorway. I don't see him in the hallway. Where did he walk off to? Okay, Hisashi, go find where Nedzu is and see if Izuku is just trying to find him. Distract him if necessary. I'm going to head down the rooms of this hallway and stay in this area, so if he comes back I'll be here. Nemuri, you go walk around downstairs and see if you can find him anywhere. Tensei, head down to the parents and see if he shows up anywhere. Aizawa broke it down. The friends nodded in agreement before taking their job positions. Meanwhile, Izuku smiled from his favorite hiding spot in the office. He thinks it will be an exciting game of hide and seek. Izuku hid his giggle as he silently walked off toward where he heard other children. They must be far away, but he will find them and make friends. Mama, Nichan? Tenya asked his mother, while his eyes still searched for his tall brother. He walked away a while ago, but he hasn't come back. Don't worry, Tenya. Tensei will be back soon. Go and play for a little while. He will be back before you know it, Tenya's mother said. Tenya nodded and headed to the play area where most of the children his age were playing. He slowly walked carefully to the secluded area with a single ball. He reached down at the same time a green-haired boy appeared next to the ball. Tenya squeaked at the sudden appearance. Hi. Hi. The green-haired child said, waving his hands at Tenya. Tenya tilted his head in confusion with his hands, holding the ball. Hello, Tenya replied shyly. Izuku smiled. Wanna be friends? Tenya gasped and smiled at the question. He could finally have a friend. No one wanted to be his friend at the daycare since he kept to himself most of the time. He could have a friend. Okay. I'm Izuku. Izuku introduced himself, was tumbling over his words a little bit. Tenya smiled and replied, I'm Tenya. Yay. Izuku said loudly. In response, Tenya laughed at his loud excitement. The two agreed to play catch with the ball. Tenya was curious about where Izuku's parents were, but he was too busy having fun to really question it. After a while of them playing together, Izuku looked over Tenya's shoulder and giggled, I'm gonna hide again. Bye, friend. Izuku waved and walked fast over to a hiding spot behind a tree. Tenya waved back before saying his big brother, Nichan. Tensei eased his worried look at seeing his little brother. Hey, Tenya. How's it going? I made a friend. Izuku. Tenya said happily while his brother's face became a little worried. Tensei asked, Do you know where he went? Tenya nodded and giggled. He pointed in the direction of the school. Tensei nodded slowly and grabbed his phone. What? Did you find him? Hisashi whispered over the phone. No, but my brother said he might be coming your way. I'm keeping next to him in case he comes back, Tensei replied as he stayed by his curious-looking brother. Okay. Hisashi said before hanging up. Hey, let's go play ball, Tensei said smiling at his brother while on the inside he was screaming. Hisashi was around the same place that Nedzu was preparing the snacks and overall care inside the building. He never stayed too close, but he kept an eye out for the green-haired child. But when he was on the phone with Tensei, a certain missing green-haired child snuck by laughing as quietly as they could. Izuku smiled as he made his way past him. When he hung up the phone, he caught a glimpse of Izuku heading up the stairs. He ran toward where Izuku was while sending an urgent text to Nemuri that he was heading to her. By the time he was at the bottom of the stairs, he didn't hear any tiny stops leading up. He breathed out heavily, pushing his bangs out of his sweaty face. Nemuri checked her text and cursed as she walked past teachers to look at the ground for any glimpse of green she could find. She heard a giggle from behind her and saw tiny legs head past unnoticed. Her eyes widened and tried to follow him, only to find out she lost him in the many people in the hallway passing through. She looked around as she pushed through the passing parents to look for him. Izuku giggled, but he noticed how worried she looked and stopped his laughing. He pouted at the feeling of guilt from hiding from them, even though they were just worried, before continuing to his papa's office. Nemuri texted Aizawa that Izuku just passed her. She ran her hand down her face. She hopes they find him soon. She was so worried that he might be hurt while he was running around. Izuku stumbled to his favorite spot behind his papa's desk as Aizawa headed out the faculty lounge to search every room again for the 10th time. Izuku was beginning to feel like he wanted to end the game already, but he was having fun with everyone playing hide and seek with him. Aizawa breathed out heavily at the office door before searching the floor for a sign of the boy. When he discovered nothing, he sank down to sit right in front of Nedzu's desk where Izuku was hiding. He breathed out slowly and groaned with face in his hands. Oh, where is he? This never would have happened if it weren't for me. If I would have watched him better like I should have, this wouldn't have happened. But now I don't know where he is, if he is hurt. I is CK at being an uncle for Izuku, he said sadly, looking at the ground. I'm sorry, Izuku. No. Izuku called out from his spot. Aizawa looked up in confusion when he heard little step heading to his slumped-over form. No sad. I'm sorry. Please, no sad. Aizawa got wrapped up in a hug by Izuku, who looked on the verge of tears. Izuku? Are you okay? Did you get hurt? I'm okay. I promise. Don't be sad. I'm sorry. Izuku mumbled into his chest. Aizawa rubbed his curls as Hizashi and Nemuri showed up at the office door to the scene before them. They all joined in on the hug in the ground of the office and listened to Izuku apologize for making them worried. They were just happy that he was safe now, and a little tired from the wild goose chase. Izuku sniffled softly as they all reassured him that they weren't mad, only worried. Soon, the four joined the pair of brothers playing catch. Aizu-chan. Hi, Ten-chan. Oh hey, looks like he made a friend during this whole mess. Hizashi noticed as the two little boys ran up and hugged each other. Yeah, looks like it. You guys, want to grab something to eat since family day is almost over? Yes. Hizashi and Nemuri said in a tired unison. Aizawa watched Izuku play with Tenya as the four friends ate with their parents. He made sure to never take his eyes off of him for too long. They were a family after all. Nedzu sighed as he tucked Izuku good night. You okay, Izuku? You have been looking quite down. Was it because of what happened today? Yeah. Don't want them to worry no more. Izuku said sadly to his dad from under his comfy blanket. Well, now cheer up. They were just worried for you. That means they care an awful lot about you. Nedzu explained while fixing up his pillows. Really? Izuku perked up at hearing that maybe they didn't hate him because of the stunt he pulled. He was really worried that he might not play with them again. Yes, really. I consider them a part of your family. No matter if they are related to you or not. They will genuinely care for you and love you like I do. Nedzu kindly replied with a soft smile. Love you, Papa. Izuku tiredly retorted as his eyes drooped. Love you too, little mouse. Good night. Nedzu said, placing a small kiss on his forehead before heading out of the room. He is growing up so fast. Nedzu thought as he looked back at his son's room chapter text. Nedzu was feeling sentimental, and honestly, who could blame him? It had been a whole year since he adopted Izuku into his life and accepted his role as a parent to a human baby. Well, closer to 10 months, since he found him when he was 2 months old. Ever since adopting Izuku, Nedzu's life has gotten more tiring, but far happier. Before Izuku, life felt empty and boring. The only upside was being the principal of UA, and even then he was still criticized for even the smallest slip-up. But when Izuku came into his life, he started to see the bright side of things. The world made of black and white grew into color each and every day. The hatred he felt all his life lessened when he heard Izuku laugh or saw him smile. That's why he didn't really want to see Izuku get older, but he knew it was a part of life. Instead of trying to hold back Izuku from growing up, like the humans used to do to him, he wanted to see him grow. He wanted to see Izuku become his own person. But right now, he has a birthday party to plan for Friday. It will be interesting to see what kind of gifts people give Izuku. Izuku, we have to wait for the perfect temperature of the tea, Nedzu explained to the curious almost 1-year-old holding his cup of imaginary tea. Tea, Izuku drawled as he held onto his cup with both hands, staring intensely into the bottom of the cup. Yes, and then we sip, Nedzu finished off with an exaggerated sip to his tea. Izuku followed suit with an equally loud slurp to his empty cup. He giggled and Nedzu smiled softly at the cheerful child. I wouldn't trade my life as a father for anything. What the heck do we get for Izuku? Hisashi asked as the small group walked through the mall. Tensei had Tenya riding on his shoulder, meanwhile Namuri and Aizawa were looking at the shop windows they passed. It would be hard to find a gift for Izuku due to how much Nedzu spoiled the kid. The best choice would be something more sentimental, opposed to just a cool plushie that we can buy anywhere. Aizawa explained, looking around for anything that would be good for Izuku. Namuri's eyes brightened when her eyes locked in a certain shop. I got it. I can make my own stuffed animal. She took off and the others followed her inside the Build-A-Bear. Namuri picked a white fluffy bear and a white mouse plush. She asked a worker to try to combine the two skins into one plush. They told her to come back at the end of the shopping trip since the custom order would take a while. Hisashi headed down the hall and spotted something in the window of an antique thrift shop. He ran straight inside, leaving his other two friends to follow him. He ran up to the worker behind the register for the music box in the window. The worker agreed and got it down from the display. I used to have a little music box when I was little, so I want Izuku to have the same comfort I had when I was young, Hisashi explained while the worker retrieved the music box from its spot. After that was done, Hisashi was carrying the music box in a doubled-up paper bag. Tensei led the way since he wanted to check a specific shop, speeding up when he saw it further down. The others hurried after him. Tensei speedwalked inside a bicycle shop and headed towards the kids section. Once there, he spotted a bright cherry-red tricycle with a woven basket and tiny bell attached to the front. I learned to ride when I was very young, and I loved the freedom of riding around. I hope Izuku will like it. Tensei explained. Once the trike had been purchased and the group had gone back to walking aimlessly around the mall, Tensei asked his little brother what he wanted to get for Izuku. Tenya thought for a moment before saying, colors. Colors? Oh, you mean like coloring books and stuff? Tensei asked, receiving a nod from his brother. Okay. The three headed to the general store to buy a coloring book and crayons. They were planning on simply getting a normal large pack of crayons, but then Tenya headed towards a large art kit containing crayons, markers, colored pencils, watercolors, and brushes. Colors! Tenya exclaimed while trying to pick up the large blue kit. The three teens shrugged, picking up the art kit before heading to the cash register to check out. They also got a pro-hero-themed coloring book that they hadn't seen Nedzu get Izuku yet. They walked out and met Namuri, who had the custom plush in a large brown paper bag. Aizawa was the only one left who still needed to get a gift for Izuku. A few minutes of searching later, he spotted the perfect gift in the window of a shop. Oh, Izuku would love that. It was the day of Izuku's birthday party. Nedzu hosted it at his apartment since he wanted it to be a private party with only Izuku's close family. Nedzu, Aizawa, Hisashi, Namuri, Tensei, and his first friend, Tenya. Izuku was dressed for the occasion in a birthday-themed onesie and a party hat on the top of his head surrounded by his curly green hair. The party started with an animated movie before cutting the cake Nedzu had made ahead of time. Nedzu was delighted that it turned out so well. It was a small, 2-layer cake covered in delicious white buttercream. The top had the message, "Happy Birthday Izuku," written in thin green icing. All kinds of sprinkles were all around the cake. One layer was vanilla and the other was chocolate. Aizawa, Hisashi, and Nedzu chose the vanilla cake on top while Namuri, Tensei, Tenya, and Izuku ate from the bigger chocolate layer on the bottom. After the cake, Everyone sat down and talked to each other while their stomachs settled. About half an hour later, it was time for presents. Yay! Izuku said happily as Nedzu rounded up the gifts. Who wants to go first? Nedzu asked, prompting Nemuri to raise her hand. I'll go. Nemuri answered while picking up her present. I think Izuku will love this. Oh really? Nedzu asked. Yep. Nemuri said, placing the bag in front of Izuku. Izuku ripped open the paper to see an imitation of his father in plush form. Papa! Izuku cried out before hugging the plush to his chest. The white bear mouse hybrid had on a white dress shirt, black pants, a pair of black shoes, a black vest, and a glossy red bow tie. Nedzu chuckled at the small toy that looked like him. Sort of. Thank you. Izuku exclaimed, muffled by the plush's soft fur. I'll go next. Hisashi said as he placed a soft brown bag in front of Izuku. Izuku placed the plush to the side before ripping open the paper. Pretty, Izuku murmured, looking at the music box. It had a light mint green outside with a carnation pink rim. Hisashi went ahead and turned the little crank. The soft song began to play as the music box opened to show a ballerina dancing in the center. Izuku giggled at the dancer while swaying to the music. I think he likes it, Hisashi whispered to his friends. Thank you, Izuku mumbled as he focused on the ballerina doing her dance as the lid slowly shut. Tensei stood and wheeled over the tricycle. Izuku's eyes widened in curiosity, toddling over to investigate. This is a lovely tricycle, Nedzu commended. I hope Izuku likes it, Tensei responded. He does. Thank you, Tensei. He will love it when he is old enough to ride it. Nedzu thanked. Tensei's cheeks reddened in embarrassment, realizing that Izuku probably won't use the bike until a few years later. Tenya went next with his gift, and Izuku loved it because of the many colors. Nedzu smiled as Izuku started to make a mess with the markers on the first page of his new coloring book. He carefully took the markers away for Aizawa to give Izuku his gift. Problem child, I think you would like this since it is comfortable and makes us spot you easily, Aizawa said before handing Izuku's gift to him, which he proudly ripped open. Izuku was now holding a pink sleeping bag with a soft pink lining on the inside. Izuku smiled before changing, yay, yay, yay. He started to climb inside with his plush bear with the help of Aizawa. Thank you, Izuku mumbled from beneath all the comfy material. Nedzu laughed at seeing his little boy having fun with his family surrounding him. Now it was Nedzu's turn to give Izuku his last gift. He laughed maniacally before lifting a huge bag from behind the couch. He gently dumped the contents onto the ground to show everyone what he bought. Movies? A whole collection of movies ranging from animation to teen comedies. Studio Ghibli, Pixar, DreamWorks, and Disney movies took up the majority. But Aizawa saw Mean Girls and Legally Blonde in the pile. What is up with these? Aizawa asked at the two movies that stuck out from the cartoon movies. He needs to be cultured, Nedzu responded, which got him laughs from 3 of the teens in the room. Tenya looked confused while Aizawa looked on with a smile. Izuku looked out from his sleeping bag to see his family having fun with each other. Nedzu looked at him to receive a smile from his little mouse. I think he knows how much his family loves him. I know that Izuku's family will grow in the future. Nedzu thought. It was family day today. Everyone's family was able to come to UA to spend some time with their child at the school campus. And it was even more exciting for the third years that were graduating soon. It was only a short time before the third years would start their own careers, including the 4 honorary aunt and uncles of the principal's son. Hisashi's parents were chatting with Nemuri's parents while Tensei's family were off to the side with Tenya. Unfortunately, Aizawa's parents couldn't really make it because of their work, but his mother informed him to take lots of pictures for her. Hisashi was busy with Tensei as they were checking up on Tenya, who was excited to show Izuku his new puzzle book. Nemuri was pulled into a conversation with her parents to talk more about her social life to make sure no one was bringing her down. They approved of her friends, but her father was protective over her and didn't want anyone to hurt his little girl. Aizawa was hanging out in the principal's office, watching as Izuku crawled around fast on the floor. He watched as Izuku stood up after picking up one of his toys before running to him to show it off. It has been a while since I've seen Mr. Sloth, Aizawa commented, ruffling Izuku's hair. Izuku laughed, showing off the little teeth inside his mouth. He smiled as he thought back to the video Nemuri had sent them with Izuku's first steps. Hisashi is still bitter that he wasn't there to see it. But it was a happy memory nonetheless that they were all going to remember fondly, especially since Nedzu had it all recorded from the security cameras in his office as well as Nemuri's video. He thinks she even took some pictures. Since then Izuku has been walking a little better each day. He wonders if Izuku will just disappear from sight if he takes his eyes off of him. It felt like just yesterday he was saying his first words and now he is walking around. Aizawa was getting all sentimental. He looked down at the sloth toy as the office seems to grow quiet around him. The office door opened slightly to reveal his three friends without their parents. Nemuri greeted, "Our parents all met each other and are chatting up a storm right now outside the cafeteria. How's it hanging with little Izuku? Everything is good for once. He has been playing with his toys since I got here," Aizawa explained looking at his friends. "Well, where is he?" Tensei asked, receiving a confused look from Aizawa. "What do you mean?" "He's right there," Aizawa said as he pointed to where he last saw Izuku. But his fingers showed nothing but empty space and a forgotten toy lying on the ground. "Where did he go?" Hisashi called out loudly in confusion. The friends hurriedly looked around the office to see no sign of the green-haired boy, not behind the desk, not next to his toys, not next to the wide-open door. "Son of a honey bun!" Aizawa yelled in frustration at seeing where Izuku might have gone. "Why did you leave the door open?" "I thought I did." Nemuri replied, "I didn't close it all the way, but I didn't leave it wide open like that." "Oh dear, this is bad," Tensei said after he walked up to the empty doorway. "I don't see him in the hallway. Where did he walk off to?" "Okay, Hisashi, go find where Nedzu is and see if Izuku is just trying to find him. Distract him if necessary. I'm going to head down the rooms of this hallway and stay in this area, so if he comes back I'll be here. Nemuri, you go walk around downstairs and see if you can find him anywhere. Tensei, head down to the parents and see if he shows up anywhere." Aizawa broke it down. The friends nodded in agreement before taking their job positions. Meanwhile, Izuku smiled from his favorite hiding spot in the office. He thinks it will be an exciting game of hide and seek. Izuku hid his giggle as he silently walked off toward where he heard other children. They must be far away, but he will find them and make friends. "Hello, Nedzu," greeted his student as Hisashi walked towards where he was. "Hi, how are you doing? Is running an event like this calming or stressing?" Hisashi asked, hoping to get Nedzu on a big tangent of some kind. "Whatever do you mean? I like to have these events to show the extent of what UA has to offers. This event allows the family of students to visit and explore the school that their child is attending with little restrictions. It is basically like a tour through the school with the family able to talk to anyone and just have fun," Nedzu explained. "Ah, is this because you wish to pursue into becoming an entertainer as well?" Yep. "I wanted to know more about this kind of being a host thing since I want to be a radio DJ. That's the only reason why," Hisashi rambled, trying his best to distract Nedzu. "Anyway, is there any advice you can give me?" "Why, of course. I think I have just the advice you need, but it might be a long explanation," Nedzu informed him. Hisashi waved it off. "I have plenty of time. My parents are checking out outside with the Kiyama family. Please, tell me everything." You might want to take notes," Nedzu added, leading him to a more open area near the cafeteria. Hisashi silently prayed that they find Izuku fast because he doesn't really know how long this Nedzu lecture is going to last. Well, at least he will get some helpful information about what to do in his future. "Ni-chan," Tenya called out as he saw his brother make his way towards them. "Hi, Tenya." Tensei greeted his brother with a friendly smile. "Hey, have any of you seen a green-haired kid around Tenya's travel near here?" His mom furrowed her brows. "Is someone missing?" No. I might just think he is playing hide and seek or something with us," Tensei answered back. "A game of hiding and seek that we have no idea we are playing," he thought to himself. Tensei looked down at his brother, squatting down to his level. "Anyway, I'm just out there looking for him. Do you want to help, Tenya?" Izuku is playing hide and seek. Find a friend. Tenya asked with his bright eyes sparkling at the chance to play with his older brother and his first friend. You want to help your big brother out? Tensei asked, stretching out a hand. Tenya excitedly grabbed his hand and walked with his brother through the outside. He kept his eye open as he slowly walked side by side with his brother. It wasn't long before Tensei picked him up in his arms to avoid dragging his little brother behind him since his pace was a bit faster. Tenya settled in his arms quickly, scoping out the area to find his friend. Tenya spotted a head of green hair behind a bush. Izuku peered over the leaves and brought a finger to his lips. Tenya tilted his head at the action before repeating the action back. Izuku nodded back at him, slowly crawling out of his hiding spot to continue walking back into the school. Friend? Yeah, we are looking for Izuku. Friend went, Izuku went back inside? Tenya nodded back at his brother because he can't keep a secret from him. Okay, good, Tensei responded back, digging into his pocket to call Nemuri. Nemuri? Yeah, it's me. Listen, Izuku should be on the first floor right now, more towards the east area of the school. Tenya saw him go in apparently. I'm still outside. Alright, sounds good. Guess I can be out here for a little longer. Hey, do you want to play a game? Tensei asked, smiling at his brother while on the inside he was screaming. Nemuri headed straight towards where Tensei told her that Izuku would be, surveying the surroundings to spot familiar green curls. She was about to look around the area for the third time when he heard the familiar giggle of Izuku coming from nearby. For a split second, she could see a head of curls heading upstairs. Her eyes widened and tried to follow him only to find out she lost him in the many people in the hallway passing through. Nemuri texted Aizawa that Izuku just got past her and was heading upstairs. She ran her hand down her face. She hopes they find him soon. She was so worried that he might be hurt while he was running around. Or that they would be hurt for losing him in this big school. Izuku stumbled his way inside his father's office to go back into his favorite hiding spot behind his papa's desk. Aizawa walked into the office, noticing how the office door was open slightly more than before, hoping that it wasn't just a coincidence. He was just in the faculty room looking for Izuku for about the 5th time. He had already checked all the rooms on the floor except the office. Aizawa's eyes swept over the room, notching practically nothing out of place since last time he checked. Meanwhile, under Nedzu's desk, Izuku was beginning to feel like he wanted to end the game already, but he was having fun with everyone playing hide and seek with him. Aizawa breathed out heavily, sinking down to sit right in front of Nedzu's desk where Izuku was hiding. He groaned with face in his hands. Where is he? This never would have happened if it weren't for me. If I would have watched him better as I should have, this wouldn't have happened. But now I don't know where he is if he is hurt. I suck at being an uncle for Izuku. He said sadly, looking at the ground. If I can't find one kid, how am I supposed to save people? He thought to himself before glancing out of the corner of his eye to see Izuku peeking over the corner of Nedzu's desk. Izuku, Aizawa sighed in relief. No. Izuku called out from his spot. No, sad. Sorry. Aizawa got wrapped up in a hug by Izuku, who looked on the verge of tears. Izuku? Are you okay? Did you get hurt? I'm okay. Sorry. Izuku mumbled into his chest. Aizawa rubbed his curls. Next time you want to play hide and seek, let all of us know first. We were all worried about you. Izuku tightened his grip on Aizawa's school jacket while Nemuri showed up at the office door to the scene before. She was a bit worried since Aizawa hadn't responded in text yet. Hizashi appeared next with a tired look in his eyes and a notebook filled with helpful advice from Nedzu. They all joined in on the hug in the ground of the office and listened to Izuku apologize for making them worried. They were all just happy that Izuku was safe now, and a little tired from the wild goose chase. Izuku sniffled softly as they all reassured him that they weren't mad, only worried. Soon, the four joined the pair of brothers playing catch. Aizu-chan. Hi, Ten-chan. You guys want to grab something to eat since family day is almost over? Yes, Hizashi and Nemuri said in a tired unison. Aizawa watched Izuku play with Tenya as the four friends ate with their parents. Tenya was happily showing Izuku his new book while the two snacked on sliced apples. He made sure to never take his eyes off of him for too long. They were a family after all. Nedzu sighed as he tucked Izuku goodnight. "You okay, Izuku? You have been looking quite down. Was it because of what happened today?" Izuku nodded sadly to his dad from under his comfy blanket. "Well, now cheer up. They were just worried for you. That means they care an awful lot about you," Nedzu explained while fixing up his pillows. "Really?" Izuku perked up at hearing that maybe they didn't hate him because of the stunt he pulled. He was really worried that he might not play with them again. "Yes, really. I consider them a part of your family. No matter if they are related to you or not. They will genuinely care for you and love you as I do," Nedzu kindly replied with a soft smile. "Love you, Papa," Izuku tiredly retorted as his eyes drooped. "Love you too, little mouse. Good night," Nedzu said, placing a small kiss on his forehead before heading out of the room. He is growing up so fast, Nedzu thought as he looked back at his son's room. Hopefully he doesn't grow up too fast. Nedzu enjoyed letting Izuku live a normal life. He went to a normal school because Nedzu wanted him to live as normal as he could with a pro hero as his secret father. Hopefully he finds some friends that will be there for him in the long run. When he grew older, Nedzu hoped that Izuku will live his life as freely as he can because Nedzu wanted him to be uncontrolled. Maybe with a little bit of instruction and advice, but never with an abusive hand pushing him into things. Izuku was 3 years old now and Nedzu was feeling that the time was passing too quickly. It felt like a week ago that Izuku turned 1. Nedzu sipped his mint tea with his little mint-flavored cookies as he watched Izuku interact with Tenya during the school day at UA. Tenya was allowed to have a play date with his friend while their big brother was busy with his new hero work. Yes, all his honorary uncles and aunt were now working as pro heroes. Under the names Midnight, Ingenium, Present Mike and Eraserhead, they patrol the streets and protect the innocent from danger. Nedzu couldn't be more proud at what they have become. Although he does remember that they graduated with a heavy heart by having to say goodbye to their honorary nephew. They missed getting to see him every day, but they do visit when they don't have any patrol clogging up their schedule. Aizawa visited the most during the day since he works as an underground hero during the night. Anyway, enough of talking about the past because Endeavor was visiting with Nedzu to talk about when he might be able to enroll his children in UA. Nedzu allowed him to bring his youngest child, Shudo, so that Izuku might have another friend to lay with while his father talked to another father. He hoped that Endeavor had fixed his whole problem with all might and was actually behaving like a good father to his children. But his hope will be quickly diminished very soon. Tenya and Izuku were coloring in their coloring books when a child of split white and red hair walked in shyly. "Behave," a harsh voice said from the deck of the door before shutting it loudly. The young boy flinched before continuing to a place a few feet away from the two. Izuku tilted his head and looked at Tenya. "I think he is shy." "It looks like he is," Tenya replied. "What do we do?" "I'm going to invite him over to play with us," Izuku said to his friend before they both nodded at each other. The new boy looked over when Izuku walked to him. "What do you want?" "I want to be friends," Izuku responded with his hand held out. "I'm Izuku." "Why do you want to be friends?" Shudo asked quietly. Izuku looked at him. "Because you look lonely, and I don't want you to be. We have a wide selection of toys to play with." Tenya yelled out from his spot behind Izuku. Shudo mumbled. "What's your favorite hero?" "Mine is Nedzu," Izuku asked the young boy. "I like my brother, Ingenium, the best," Tenya said from behind Izuku, looking at Shudo. "I like All Might, but my dad doesn't like him very much," Shudo answered with a slight pink tinge to his cheeks. "All Might is a good hero. He works well with his enhanced abilities to rescue people and defeats villains easily," Izuku replied intelligently with his hand under his chin. Tenya nodded at his words while Shudo looked at them curiously. "We can play a game of heroes. I'll be Nedzu, Tenya can be Ingenium, and you can be All Might," Izuku offered. "I don't have to be Endeavor?" Shudo asked, raising his brow. "Nope." Shudo was beginning to like this place. Nedzu was tired of Endeavor. He hasn't changed his mind about his little petty rivalry at all in these past years. He walked with him back to the room where the children were playing. Nedzu opened the door to see his child getting along well with the other two. They all seemed to be playing with some action figures of recent pro heroes. His heart grew at the sight of his son playing with a little cloth doll that he made himself a few months ago, since Nedzu didn't make any merchandise. Tenya was playing his brother and Shuto was playing with a tall All Might figurine. Shuto! Endeavor called out to his son, scaring the three children inside the room. Nedzu fur bristled at his son's frightened face. Endeavor, I highly recommend you lower your voice. Now. Nedzu offered to the tall alumni. Endeavor scoffed while his son scurried to his side, rather silent. Nedzu noticed how Shuto hid his left arm from his sight as he rushed past to gate behind his father. Nedzu narrowed his gaze to see that Shuto scratches at his covered arm. Before he could ask if the boy wanted to go to the nurse's office, Endeavor started dragging him away by his left arm. Shuto winced at his string grip while he practically dragged him away from the room. Nedzu crosses his arms with a sinister smile on his face, looking at Endeavor exiting. He turned back to Izuku to ask some questions. Did you notice anything strange, son? Nedzu approached his son. Izuku tapped his finger to his chin, remembering the play date. He didn't really believe us when we told him we wanted to play with him and be friend. He told us his dad didn't like All Might. Strange. Anything else? Nedzu asked. He reacted scared if we yelled too loud. He, kind of scratched at his left arm every now and then. Tenya added from his place next to Izuku's side. Nedzu hummed to himself before nodding to himself. You two continue your fun. Where are you going, Dad? Izuku questioned his father as he opened the door. I'm going to call up an old friend who helped me before. I need his help for a big case I'm about to be headmaster of. And if my hunch is correct, the person in question will face a punishment worse than death. Nedzu answered with a creepy smile. Oh, love you, Izuku commented before continuing to pick up and play with his homemade cloth doll. I love you too, little mouse, Nedzu commented before closing the door. Detective, nice to see you again. Ready to bring down a pro hero with me? Want some tea? Nedzu greeted Naomasa, overjoyed at the possibility of getting Endeavor right where he wanted him. Oh boy. Naomasa sighed before taking his seat across from Nedzu sitting at his desk. Now then, Nedzu gathered himself before smiling happily at the man. What is our first step to get rid of this piece of sheet? Nedzu was tired of clenching his teeth. Tsukachi needed time to gather evidence on his end, so he recommended that Nedzu do his own recon on getting information to use against Endeavor. And what better way to do that than scheduling a play date at Endeavor's house while he goes to work? This gives him the perfect chance to see how the house is and what the family behaves like. So while Tsukachi was skidding around his office finding anything under a rock, Nedzu was waiting patiently outside for Mrs. Todoroki to answer the door. Finally, she opened the door with a nervous smile. Hello, I have come to let Izuku have a playdate with. Shoto. I'm Nedzu, principal of UA, he greeted holding out his paw, which Rei shook with practiced ease. Oh yes. Hello, I'm Shoto's mother. You can call me Rei, I prefer it, Rei replied. Nedzu noticed how she didn't say how she was his wife, she just said that she was a mother. He placed that thought in possible evidence against Endeavor. He walked in and automatically noticed how different it was from his home. It was traditional, yes, and his was more odor, but there was a feeling to it. This house didn't feel like home, it just felt empty. Like there was no warmth, only coldness. Another piece of evidence logged away in his memory. Come this way to the living room. Shoto is waiting there, Rei said leading the way. Nezu followed her, noticing small things along the journey. There was no family portraits or pictures in general of the family members. He narrowed his eyes as he noticed how Shoto sat alone on the couch when they entered. That was strange. Where was Endeavor's other children? Nedzu let Izuku go so he could run up to his newest friend to play. Rei smiled softly at Shoto's happy face. Would you mind if I looked around the house? I never get invited to many house parties. Nedzu asked with a smile. Rei nodded. Nedzu smiled bigger and gently responded, Great. He went off, leaving his son in the care of the gentle mother. Nedzu's smile dropped as he ventured around the house. The traditional Japanese houses were always confusing to him. But before long, he found a giant room. A feeling settled in his stomach that didn't feel good. No, not good at all. He opened the screen door and held in utter horror he felt. It was like a flashback to when he was trapped. That was the feeling of no escape that he got from the room. He noticed how there was dried blood stains on the floor. He stepped inside quietly to see the many training equipment up on the walls. He didn't get a good feeling about this. "Who are you?" a male voice said from behind him. He turned around to see bright red hair and electric blue eyes in the form of a preteen boy. "Am I a bear or a mouse?" "Hello, I'm Nedzu," he greeted to the boy. The boy scrunched his eyebrows. "Oh, the principal of UA? What are you doing here?" "My son is having a playdate with your younger brother, Shoto," Nedzu replied, approaching the preteen, eager to get out of this room. The boy stepped back in mild fear. "You aren't going to train me, right?" he asked with a tone to his voice that Nedzu recognized as fear. "No, I'm not." "Does you father train you?" Nedzu questioned. Electric blue eyes looked over the animal with a quirk in silence. He deducted that this might be his only chance. He narrowed his eyes before stating to Nedzu, "No, training isn't the right word for what he does to me or my family." Rei was sitting on the couch watching her son play with his new friend. Shoto would turn 4 in 2 months and she dreaded it so soon. She didn't want to be another maker to Endeavor's master plan, but she didn't want her son to be treated the way Endeavor would if he turns out to have the perfect combination he is looking for. She was so scared for her children. She doesn't want this to happen anymore. From the corner of her eyes, she noticed her second youngest, Natsuo. "Hello, Natsuo. What are you doing?" "Just watching, Mama." "Does Shoto have a friend?" Natsuo asked. Rei smiled. "Yes, just a few days ago." Just then, Nedzu came around the corner with her eldest, Tuya. He motioned for her to come to him. Rei raised a brow, very curious to see what Nedzu could want. She excused herself to Natsuo, leaving him to watch over the 2 younger kids. "Yes?" she asked, looking between her son and Nedzu. Nedzu raised his somber-looking eyes. "Tell me everything. I want to help you and your family get away from him." Rei gasped as tears started to fall silently. She could finally have help. She nodded before leading the 2 away to tell her story, while the other 2 children watched over the youngest play with his new friend. Natsuo and Fuyumi smiled at their brother while wondering what her mother was talking about so fervently with the principal. After an hour, the 3 exited the room with matching looks of calmness. "All right, Izuku, time to head home. We will see your friend and his family again very soon," Nedzu said to his young son. Izuku looked up and nodded happily at his dad. "Hey, Dad. Bye, Shoti. I'll see you later," Izuku retorted to his friend while walking away, waving at him. Shoto waved back with a relaxed smile at his very excited friend. Nedzu nodded to Rei and Tuya before heading outside. He had a lot to tell to Tsukachi. "All right, Endeavor. Let's play a game," Nedzu thought to himself with a sadistic smile growing on his face while he made his way to the police station. When he entered, Izuku took in a gasp at the sight of 4 familiar faces. Uncle Zawa, Uncle Ten, Uncle Zashi, Aunt Nem. Izuku greeted loudly at the sight of his 4 favorite aunt and uncles. Eraserhead hid his gentle smile under his scarf while Present Mike yelled openly in excitement. Ingenium smiled under his night mask while Midnight gladly welcomed him with a big greeting. Midnight welcomed, "Hey, Izuku. How have you been, little guy? You are growing so tall." Izuku ran up to her for Midnight to wrap him up in a hug. Hey, where my hug?" Present Mike complained loudly, only to receive a loving hug from Izuku by a Midnight passing him to the loud blonde. Ingenium received his nice big hug from Present Mike passing him the small child. "Hello, buddy. Haven't seen you in a while." Eraserhead took the child from his other uncle with his gray scarf. "Hey, problem child," Eraserhead greeted softly, ruffling up Izuku's curls. "I'm heading to Tsukachi's office to talk about a new case involving Endeavor," Nedzu replied to his old students. "Endeavor?" Man, I don't really like that guy. He's all full of himself. Present Mike responded. All full of himself, really? Honestly, best way to describe him is very angry at seemingly nothing and everything at the same time. Ingenium retorted. Why are you doing a case on him, Nedzu? Midnight asked quietly while Eraserhead distracted Izuku with his dancing scarf. It's not safe to talk about it here, but let it be known that Endeavor will be taken down for what he has been doing. Do you need our help with anything, sir? Ingenium asked politely. Well, Izuku doesn't really know what the whole thing will come to eventually. I would like you four to take care of him while I bring him down. Can you do that? Nedzu questioned with a calm smile directed toward the smiling Izuku. Babysit the little guy, like we used to do. Sure. No problems. Present Mike answered happily, ready to spoil his nephew. Good. I'll go talk to Tsukachi. I'll leave Izuku in your hands for this short PRD. Nedzu said. The four nodded at the easy order, ignoring the sadistic smile that Nedzu was gaining thinking about what he could do to Endeavor. Tsukachi was in his office gathering details from his sources about Endeavor dealing with illegal practice of quirk marriage when Nedzu strolled in looking happy to rip some limbs of a certain someone. He is going down. Tonight. Nedzu stated in front of Tsukachi's desk. Tsukachi sat down at his office desk with his head in his hand while the other searched for more evidence of Endeavor's examples of abusive behaviors while dealing with citizens. He had already gathered video evidence of Endeavor putting innocent lives in danger with his strong fire quirk. Nedzu had already prepared many evidence of reports of the amount of damage that Endeavor had made while dealing with villain attacks. Tsukachi couldn't tell how much Nedzu had gathered in such a short time, but by the sheer height of it, he could tell that Endeavor was in some deep trouble. He felt nervous for anyone else to cross Nedzu to this degree. Did you find anything else to drag his name in the mud? Nedzu asked as he organized the papers he collected into different folders while his legs slightly swung on his short height chair. A lot actually. More than I thought I would find in such a short amount of time. It makes me wonder how no one ever looked closely on how much damage he did. Tsukachi said as he scrolled down yet another source reporting on the worst things Endeavor has caused. It sure seems that way, doesn't it? Nedzu stated unnervingly sadistically smiling as he stacked all the evidence against him that was slowly growing in weight and length. I can't wait for everyone to see how much of a terrible individual he is. How bad he is being his facade of heroism. Based on what you told me, I am eager to see the faces of unsuspecting people who doesn't know what he has done. I'm honestly waiting myself. Nedzu replied with a gleeful smile, already plotting what he could possibly do to the poor excuse of a father. I can't wait for them to know what he has been hiding from the public's eyes. The four uncles and aunt watched over Izuku at his home while Nedzu dealt with most of the digging. Eraserhead gladly handed over what he had gathered in his relatively short time working the underground hero life. Hizashi and Tensei told their own experiences talking with him and how they felt strange in his glaring eyes. Nemuri told of her unpleasant conversation with him regarding ranks and how he smirked proudly at saying how his offspring will surely beat All Might before he could even retire. Nedzu took all of it into consideration, gathering each and every dirty detail that will prolong Endeavor's stay in a cell. After many long hours of gathering, they finally gained enough evidence to use against Endeavor in court. Finally, exactly when he predicted it will end. Now it's time for the second step of his plan that would commence tomorrow as scheduled. Nedzu smiled as he guided Rei and her children into the same room of Izuku and Tenya. Without Endeavor knowledge, his family had been sneaked out and was now been held safely in Nedzu's protection. Endeavor was already waiting in his office for them to talk about a certain issue, but little does he know, the only problem is him. You are welcome to stay here for as long as you need. I will take care of the big issue that holds your family back from the happy life you all deserve. Tensei will watch over you all with his little brother, Tenya. After this day, you won't be under his control anymore. Nedzu explained while Rei smiled at him gratefully. Thank you so much, Rei replied with a single joyful tear rolling down her cheek. She thanked him once again before following her eldest son into the room. Izuku's giggle was the last happy thing Nedzu heard before closing the doors safely behind him. Nedzu adopted a neutral frown that replaced his smile. He breathed out and headed to his office where Endeavor waited. He opened the door. Ignoring Endeavor's complaining of him taking so long, he climbed up into his seat to face the fiery man. "What seems to be a big problem that I was forced to come meet you to deal with?" Endeavor asked, arms folded across his chest. "Yes. The problem is you," Nedzu said before taking a well-needed sip of tea. Endeavor eyes twitched. "What?" "You heard me, flaming industrial waste disposal." Nedzu snickered, playing with the teabag strings sticking out of his teacup. "How dare you?" Endeavor started to say before Nedzu brought one of his paws up to silence him. "How dare I?" "Oh no, no, no. You don't get to say that, dear hero," Nedzu stated before taking a long sip of his tea. He paused to look into the small photo frame of his son and him for motivation to continue with his plan. "The police are on their way now. I spent a lot of time gathering information against you to use in court to bring your dark dealings out into the light. Now, it is finally the time for you to face your future." "But can't believe this. I'm a pro-hero," Endeavor complained loudly, flames bruising higher from his shoulders. "You want me to be the bad guy? All right, I'm the bad guy," Nedzu stated, staring straight into Endeavor's eyes. "Going to jail. Peace. Garbage." He clapped his paws together with each pause between words. Before Endeavor could say anything, Tsukachi came into the office with Eraserhead right behind him, scarf at the ready in case Endeavor put up any fight. Nedzu watched with a small smile that grew more sadistic as Endeavor was apprehended and dragged out of his office. With his short amount of alone time, he sipped his tea while laughing maniacally. With all the evidence shown at the court, Endeavor was found guilty. It also helped that the young Toya and Rei stepped up and relayed what their lives were like while the other three sat in patience, waiting until the end. Reports of his rude and terrible behavior towards people around incidents. Receipts of the illegal Cork marriage. And every last piece of detail they could dig up contributed to the case greatly. His overpriced lawyers tried to dig their way out of the long, unending hole, but they were no match for Nedzu's intelligence for gathering the plan. The judge banged his gavel, deciding the final punishment for the guilty former hero. Endeavor's hero license will be taken away. The children will be under the full custody of Miss Rei. And what was that last bit again? Oh yes. Nedzu will be allowed to have one last talk with him before he is sent to his jail cell. "Hello, Todoroki Enji, formerly known as Endeavor." Nedzu's mocking voice called out to him, slightly muffled. "What? What is this place?" Enji questioned as he looked around the hauntingly abandoned-looking area. He looked down to find his wrists in chains to prevent him from using his quirk to full capacity. The cuffs allowed him to use his quirk to a certain very small amount. He wasn't in his costume anymore, he was stripped of his hero status. He was dressed solely in a black shirt and pants, bare feet against the cold cement of the fake street. Nedzu's voice echoed from wherever he was hiding. "Oh? You don't remember the old training grounds that you used to try to become a hero? Well, so much for that. Why did you bring me here? What do you have planned?" Enji asked as he started to walk around to find the source of the chilling principal's voice. "Oh. Well, that is simple to answer." Nedzu's cheerful voice answered before a twisted anger tone seemed to creep in. "Humans like you disgust me," Nedzu's voice sounded from the speaker in front of him. "Humans like you don't care about who they hurt to get their way. The way you saw your own family was the way the scientists saw me. Not alive, not worthy of any rights, only as an experiment to play with. That. Shut. You have no right to defend yourself for what you did to them. What you did to your children was unforgivable. You did to get them was unbelievable. And the way you obtained your wife is inexcusable." Nedzu continued as he prepared each and every one of his machines to attack on full. "Your therapist had informed me of what you tried to excuse yourself with. Ha! You think that excuse will help you? I did it to make them stronger. Bullshit. You did it for your own personable, petty, one-sided rivalry between All Might. No matter what you say, it what dig you out of the hole it you put yourself in. And now, it is time for me to have some fun and play with you. Ha ha ha. Silly excuse for a hero, try to survive. Come on, endeavor. I want to play a game. Nedzu added before he started the first obstacle. Enji's eyes widened as a large object casted a huge shadow that covered his own very quickly. He gritted his teeth as his eyes shrieked upon seeing what he was up against. Nedzu's sadistic smile only grew as he peeked at a sweat drop rolling down his victim's face. With the most satisfying laugh, he started up the first punishing machine that he created, his own design. Enji was taken away in stronger quirk-resistant cuffs to his new home in jail. The officers noticed how cheerful Nedzu waved at the former pro-hero's back. The man in question seemed to be quite shaken at what happened inside the area. His face was frozen into a panicked look with his skin paled and eyes looked frustratingly scared. "Hey Papa, are you done having fun?" Izuku questioned before his father scooped him up slightly off the ground into a hug. "I'm done with my work, but the only fun I have is playing with you, my little mouse." Izuku giggled as his father tickled his neck with his fuzzy paw. Yes, Nedzu surely didn't enjoy the punishment as much as he thought he would. He only regrets that he didn't ask for more time. Oh well, at least the time can be spent spending time with his most favorite human in the whole world. Izuku smiled as he touched his forehead to his father's. This is what he cared most for. The moments he spent with his beloved son. Nedzu, of course, took care of all the necessities for the family, the Fukuyama family. They no longer had to go by Todoroki since the trash receptacle himself was no longer their puppet master. Nedzu helped Rei take the cold traditional house and sell it for a warm, modern home for them. Nedzu recommended one 4-bedroom apartment that was in the same protective building that he lived in, just a few floors down. It was more welcoming than the other house, and it would allow for Nedzu to watch over them while keeping a distance. And now with their recent move, catch me if you can. Izuku yelled out in excitement as he raced past his father. Okay. Shoto called out after him, running to catch up with the speedy toddler. It allowed the two families to come together for play dates whenever. Rei laughed as she watched her youngest run after his friend. Be careful, Shoto. I will, Mama. Shoto exclaimed, with his hand outstretched to almost catch his friend. I'm quite delighted to see how this situation turned out. Nedzu said with a smile on his face, sipping the tea Ms. Fukuyama made. This is delicious. He complimented her. Thank you. She replied with her own gentle smile, her hair getting braided by her daughter, Fuyumi. Hey! Tuya greeted, standing next to the principal. Yes? Nedzu asked. Tuya breathed out before grinning. Thanks. You are the first and only person to help us out. I figured no one would listen since he was a pro-hero, but you did. You helped me and my family get out of there. No need to thank me, that is what real heroes do. Nedzu responded, emphasizing the real. And besides, you acted as your own family's hero too. Really how? Tuya asked, turning around for a moment to see his little brother running behind him. You approached me to talk about your situation. It takes a lot of guts to actually stand up and protect. I had a suspicion, but it wasn't confirmed until after you confronted me on it. You should be proud of the true heroism you showed to protect your family. Nedzu explained as he watched his son hide from the young Shoto behind a tree before scaring him by peeking his head out. Tuya coughed, trying to draw attention away to his cheeks going red at the praise. Thank you. Nedzu smiled almost fondly at the young teen. You are welcome. Got ya, Sho-chan. Izuku said loudly, hugging his friend around the waist. Ah. Shudo sighed when Izuku hugged him, blushing at the affection of his best friend. You did. All right. Hug time. Natsuo shouted, ganging up in the two younger boys to hug them tight to him in excitement. Oh. Fuyumi mumbled before walking fast to them hug, joining the warm comfort. Group hug. Izuku shouted in glee, waving down Tuya and Rei to join the hug. The two looked at each other and shrugged, they couldn't say no to the little guy. While they approached, Izuku looked at his dad. Come on, Papa. Oh, all right, little mouse. Nedzu responded, traveling through the grass to join the hug that his son had initiated. "Hey Mom," Tuya asked, approaching his mother who was in the kitchen, chopping up ingredients for a soup she was preparing. His mother glanced over to him, pausing in her chopping. "Yes, Tuya?" Tuya breathed out and asked, "Can I get my hair dyed? I just don't want to look like him. It's bad enough that my quirk." "Shush. There's nothing wrong with you or you quirk, honey. You quirk is very strong," Ray responded. "But I keep hurting myself because my body can handle it." Tuya agreed back. "Then, Nedzu can possibly help us contact someone to help your body get used to the flames. Or make your body more accustomed to it. I'm sure we can find a way to work around that," Ray explained, taking a knife and chopping up the last small pepper for the dinner she was making. "That doesn't help that I look like his replica," Tuya started to say before his mother shook her head in disagreement. Ray interrupted him by grasping his shoulders gently. "You don't. You look like my son. If you want your hair dyed, I have no problem with it." "Really?" Tuya asked, moving his hand to touch his fiery red hair. "Yes, really. But you have to wait for piercings until you are well into high school, mister." Ray wagged her finger with a smile. Tuya laughed at that rule of piercings and nodded, "Thanks, Mom." Tuya replied gratefully, allowing himself to be pulled into a hug by his mother. They both swayed in the embrace in the middle of the kitchen. For once, he didn't feel cold at the atmosphere or the burning sensation through his body. He just felt his mother's warmth. This is what he was missing his life in that forsaken house. "I love this bed. It's so comfy. And this pillow. Oh, it's so soft," Natsuo said, admiring his own room with Fuyumi sitting in his desk watching him gush over everything. "I'm glad." Fuyumi smiled. Natsuo tilted his head. "You're glad that our beds are comfy?" She laughed at his question. "What, yes? And that all of us are safe." "Yeah, me too. Now we can play with each other whenever we want. No more training, no more staying up in our rooms all day, and no more boredom. We can all have fun," Natsuo explained with his eyes shining in happiness. "We can finally have a family game night or a movie night. Like happy normal families do." "Yeah, we can. And nothing can stop us from doing that," Fuyumi said, making her brother cheer. She laughed at his outgoing behavior before they both got called down for dinner. Shoto ate his soup happily, swinging his legs from his high-seated chair. He just finished a play date with Izuku and he was absolutely starving for his mother's home-cooked meal. The family ate together with chatter around the table about everyone's day in the comfortable apartment while Shoto focused on the yummy food. "Hey, Mom?" Fuyumi asked. "Yes," Ray answered back. Natsuo smiled. "Can we watch a movie tonight?" Ray thought about it while she answered back. "We can. But I don't know where we'll find a movie to rent. I don't have any movies for the television." Knock knock. Ray looked back towards the front door. She wondered who that might be before peeking through the peephole. She was surprised to see Nedzu and Izuku standing outside with something in their hands. "Hello?" she asked, opening the door. "I believe it is movie night?" Nedzu asked, holding hands with an excited Izuku. "Movie?" Izuku cheered with some of his favorite animated movies in his hands. "Oh, would you look at that?" she whispered, letting the two into her new home. She was locking the door when she heard the excited cheers from her children. She smiled before turning around. She was so glad everything turned out okay. Izuku, Shoto and Tenya were all having a splendid play date at Nedzu's apartment with Nedzu watching over them as well as Tensei and Tuya. Ray was watching over her other children, allowing Tuya to step up as a big protective brother to his youngest sibling. Tensei had the day off from his daily trail to spend more time with his little brother, especially because of Tenya's new development. "I have a quirk. My legs have engines now," Tenya exclaimed happily, showing off his engine ports jutting out from his calves. Izuku gasped in wonder. "Wow. That's so awesome. It's kind of like Uncle Tensei, but it's on your legs." Tenya nodded, growing a grin on his face. "I know. Now I can be more like my brother and be a hero just like him. I can't wait until I get my quirk." Izuku pumped his fists, excitedly filled with anticipation. Shoto commented, "Me too." Shoto, you already got your quirk. Tuya interrupted with a gentle reminder. Remember? You had both of your sides lit up at dinner a few days ago. Oh, Shoto retorted, I forgot about that. Oh, really? Izuku exclaimed. Can I see? Shoto nodded before showing Izuku his left hand with a small flame and his right hand with a small icicle forming. Izuku's eyes brightened. Wow, that's so cool. It's so pretty. Thanks, Shoto answered back, a small blush forming on his cheeks from the praise. His older brother snickered behind him. Nedzu brought up some new for his son. If you want us to go see, we can go talk to Recovery Girl this week to see about your quirk. I'm sure she will be very happy to see you. Izuku smiled. Yay. I cannot wait until I get my quirk. Then I can help Papa. And we can all be heroes. Shoto offered. Tenya nodded. Yes. And we could be like a trio, working together to stop the mean evildoers. This is so exciting. Izuku yelled out happily, making his friend giggle this overwhelming emotion of excitement. Izuku couldn't wait to get the news about his quirk. I'm sorry, sweetie. Your X-ray results came back and they show you to be quirkless. Nedzu watched his son's face grow heartbroken as he dropped his Nedzu doll onto the floor. Nedzu remembers that day that Izuku hot-glued fabric and fluff together to try to make his papa into a plush. When he asked, his son said that he wanted to have mercy if his father, so he can support him. Nedzu thought it was adorable, and that day he explained that Izuku already supports him by being the best son he could ever have. He also remembers that Izuku did the same with Eraserhead since the underground hero didn't make any merchandise at all, so Izuku constructed and painted a long piece of glaze to act as the scarf he always wears. Safe to say, Aizawa was blushing so badly that Izuku thought he was affected by a quirk to turn him into a tomato. Nedzu was thankful that Recovery Girl broke it to him softly, since he knew that any doctor would do just the opposite. They would have probably crushed his dreams very harshly. But he was still upset that Izuku's heart was broken. After Recovery Girl gave him reassurance that everything was going to be okay and gave him some gummy bears, Nedzu patted Izuku's back to calm his sadness. Nedzu prompted, Cheer up, little mouse. Everything will be perfectly all right. Trust me. But Izuku didn't say a word back, just slightly nodded to his words, barely acknowledging what he was saying. Izuku clutched his handmade plush closer to him on the way back to their home. Nedzu watched as Izuku sulked to his room. His emotions felt like they were infecting the air in the room. Nedzu immediately grabbed his phone when Izuku closed the door to his room. He needs reassurance and support more than anything right now. So time to call in the rest of the family. Hello? It's Izuku, come as fast as you can. He needs hugs, Nedzu said, straight and to the point to the person on the other end of the line. Nedzu continued to make calls to everyone that could help bring Izuku back into a better mood. Heaven only knows how much reinforcement Izuku needs right now. About 5 minutes after his last call, the doorbell rang followed by a series of different placed knocks against the wood. Nedzu opened the door to his relatively new neighbors, the Fukuyama family, who were standing outside the door slightly breathless. Elevator was taking too long. How is he? Where is he? Rei asked, letting her children slip past her into the house. Izuku. He is in his room right now, knock before you go in. He isn't having a good day, so just your presence will cheer him up. Nedzu responded back to the youngest. Shoto nodded with a determined look before marching over to Izuku's room to comfort his friend. Tuya stood with Natsuo and Fuyumi, slowly venturing into the room when Shoto was granted access. About 10 minutes after their arrival, Izuku agreed to move out from his room into the living room to get more air. Izuku sat on the couch between Tuya and Shoto while still holding onto his plush for dear life. Then the doorbell rang, which opened up to a frantic present Mike dragging behind Eraserhead with Midnight right behind them. We heard the news. Midnight greeted, taking off her heels in a hurry to rush to wherever Izuku needed the comforting hug. Present Mike looked at Izuku's bedroom before turning to Nedzu. Is my little listener all right? Where is? By the time they got the answer of where Izuku was, Eraserhead had already claimed him in a hug. Too slow. Eraserhead mouthed to his friends, patting Izuku's back while he started to calm down from his sadness. When they all settled down, Tenya showed up finally with an out-of-breath Tensei. Traffic was a nightmare, so I just ran here. Phew, I took the stairs too. Tensei wheezed out, taking a bottle of refreshing grape juice from his former principal. Tenya rushed over to where Shoto was sitting to also support his friend. Izuku, I'm here to embrace you and hug. Izuku sniffed, I like hugs. Tenya made sure to give a good, bear hug to one of his best friends. Shoto joined in for the group hug. It wasn't until several more minutes of unending quiet support from his close friends and family was Izuku finally ready to start crying. I'm sorry. Izuku cried out, tears unleashing from his eyes. Fuyumi reached over to give him a tissue. She was prepared if something like this were to happen. What? Tenya questioned. Why are you sorry? Shoto asked, tilting his head. Tuya placed a hand on his shoulder, not knowing what Izuku's news will be. Izuku cried into his plush, burying his face in the fabric. I don't have a quirk, now I don't know if we can be a trio. What do you mean? Of course, you can still be a trio. Midnight gently replied to him, brushing her hand through his curls to calm his tears. Izuku sniffled, tears running down his cheeks. He turned to his papa, the one he looked up to the most. Can I still be a hero without one? Can I still be a hero like you? Nedzu's eyes softened at his son's honest question. Indeed. Of course you can. Izuku's tears started to slow down. Really? I can. Yeah. All you need is the right training and teaching to become one. And you need to work your hardest. Present Mike encouraged, Natsuo nodding enthusiastically with his words. That means we can still be a trio? Tenya asked before Izuku could. Yes. And I can teach you guys the speedy skills of being a hero. Midnight can teach you 3 about what you can do for your costumes. Tensei states, growing excited at the incoming future plans. I will teach you about self-defense and support items. And Mike can teach you guys more skills on long-reach attacks. Eraserhead explained, making Izuku's eye light up in hope. Nedzu smiled. And I can teach you 3 one of the most important skills, strategy. I will focus on instructing on how to fight with a plan in mind that will bring down the villains more easily. Izuku's tears dried up at last with a small sniffle. Shoto bumped shoulders with him, making a giggle erupt from his throat. Nedzu smiled as everyone clamored around, talking about what they could do in the future to help the trio become heroes. Tuya watched with a smile as his little brother grew a little more out of his shy shell. Rei leaned Fuyumi and Natsuo's heads towards her in a slight hug, while the 3 best friends laughed at each other when Eraserhead wrapped Present Mike up in his scarf for screaming next to his ear. Nedzu smiled, coming closer to rest his paw on his son's shoulder. He would give up the world to have this moment last forever. Nedzu opened his eyes expecting to see the cool light blue of his bedroom ceiling. But instead he opened his eyelids up to the white metal above his head. Confused, he slowly sat up only to freeze upon realizing where he was. He looked around to find himself back in the cage, the horrid cage from all those years ago. The cage that the human scientists forced him in to run tests. The place that he burned to the ground after he escaped. Why is he here? He looked down at his uncovered feet, studying the blinding white floor of the cage they forced him into. The familiar coldness felt horrible against his bare paws. Why is he back here? He escaped. His body froze up. The fear started to creep up his throat when he started to hear murmurs coming closer to where he was. He should be back here. Ready the next test subject. A jumbled voice mumbled right by his cage. Nedzu's ears flickered at where the sound was coming from. Slowly, he turned his gaze in order to not alert the scientists that he was awake. If he was awake, they would begin the test straight away. Nedzu's pupils shrank when his gaze drifted to the small body that one of the scientists was holding. The small body of a boy with curly green hair. Nedzu's breath got caught in his throat. The scientists must have recaptured him and Izuku. What were they planning? He thought they were dead. They can't possibly be back. Are these scientists new? Did they kidnap him and his adopted son right as his life was starting to calm down? His claws dug into his furry arm. Slowly he approached the cage wall, not making a sound so he could creep up on them. Nedzu's gaze locked on to where they were strapping a sleeping Izuku to a table with leather straps to hold his feet and hands back. Izuku slowly started to come back to consciousness. His tried-Trian eyes immediately shot open to the scientists surrounding him. Nedzu locked eyes with him right as the scientists held him down by his restraints. "What?" "Quiet," one of the scientists said, moving past Nedzu's cage. His voice seemed muddled despite Izuku's voice coming out clearly. Seems the new test subject has woken up. No matter. It will just make the procedure a little less bearable." Izuku looked so scared tied down to the table. He moved his limbs, trying to escape, but the strong grip of the other scientists wouldn't let him move more than an inch. His terrified gaze met Nedzu's once again. "Papa?" Nedzu shook himself out of his frozen state, immediately trying to pick the lock on his cage while the scientists were distracted. His tiny claws scarred against the metal. He pounded in the cage while the main scientists took a hold of a syringe. "No. Don't you dare!" Nedzu called out, his normal soft voice called out strongly in the quiet room. The scientist came closer to a struggling Izuku who continued to call out for Nedzu. The scientist's grin grew almost 5 sizes as he came closer to Izuku with the giant needle. Nedzu just got his cage unlocked when Izuku screamed out in the most haunting way. His scream echoed towards Nedzu, who clenched his paws tightly together from the sound. Izuku called out desperately, "Papa!" Nedzu woke up in a cold sweat with the feeling of tugging at his shirt sleeve. He looked down frantically to see his son at his bedside. Izuku had a worried expression on his face that seemed to deflate slightly when he had woken up. Nedzu questioned, "Izuku? Where did you?" "The secret closet door." Izuku started simply, crawling up next to his father with some difficulty with the large mattress. Nedzu shifted over to give him some space on the comfortable memory foam mattress. "I heard you making sad noises. Were you having a bad dream?" "More like a nightmare," Nedzu responded. His expression remained calm, so he didn't worry Izuku even though all he felt was dread. If people discovered that Izuku was his son, would his nightmare become true? Would Izuku be taken away from him? He would never allow that to happen. Nobody would get away with trying to hurt his son. "Oh, are you better now, Papa?" Izuku asked, raising his head to meet Nedzu's soft gaze. Nedzu smiled, holding his son closer to him. "Better now, little mouse." "Thanks to you." Izuku was at the age where he could attend elementary school and learn with other children. Nedzu was dreading the day when he could no longer keep Izuku inside his office to watch after him. He originally thought of just tutoring him on his own, but thought of the isolation it might give Izuku. He wanted Izuku to reach out and make connections through new friends, even though it broke his heart to not have him by his side. So he simply decided on a close by elementary school with good reviews from parents. He enlisted Eraserhead to sign Izuku up as his guardian since he didn't want to intimidate the school just yet. He signed Izuku up as Midoriya Izuku since with some past searching her given name was Midoriya. "But I'm going to miss you, Papa," Izuku whined, holding onto his papa's hand as Nedzu walked Izuku to the front of the UA steps for Aizawa to trade off. Nedzu smiled at him. "I will too, little mouse. But don't worry, the school day doesn't last as long as you think it does. Before you know it, you will be back with me at UA. Promise?" Izuku asked, his eyes filled with stars. "I promise. Now try to make new friends at this school and just be yourself," Nedzu added. Izuku smiled brightly. "Okay, Papa. Love you." "Love you as well," Nedzu responded, waving as he watched his son being escorted by a casual-dressed Aizawa. "Come on, kid," Aizawa replied fondly, taking a hold of Izuku's hand to walk with him to his new school. Izuku grinned and took his uncle's hand. He was sad to be separated from his father, but was very excited to make new friends. The hours didn't seem to fly by fast enough for Nedzu since all he did in his office was wonder about how Izuku was doing in his new school. He kept getting a feeling like he should have just went with his original idea, but he waved it off as the parental separation anxiety kicking in. It took many hours before Nedzu was free to go back to reclaim his son from Uncle Aizawa at the front of UA. But Nedzu was worried since Izuku was acting very quiet. He would have been smiling and jumping around by now since he was a little ball of energy. Why does he look so down? Bye-bye, Uncle Zawa. Izuku said, waving before heading inside without waiting for his papa. Nedzu looked back towards his son in confusion before turning back to Izawa. What happened? Izawa looked at him with a look of worry behind his tired eyes. I have no idea. Izuku has been acting strangely since I picked him up. Something might have happened in the school. I tried to start a conversation when we were walking back, but he only nodded and replied in very short answers like he wasn't really paying attention to what I asked. Strange. I'll go ask him about what's happening. Nedzu replied. Good, I'll head out for my early patrol. See you, Izawa responded, looking very worried. Yes, see you. Nedzu replied, waving off his past student before going inside to check on his son. When he walked in, however, he was greeted by Tuya, who looked very concerned. Hey, what happened to Izuku? Tuya asked, the concern in his eyes shining through his pupils. Nedzu shrugged. I have no clue, but I have a hunch that something bad must have happened. Why do you ask? Well, when I said hello, he kind of did something. He was acting like he was hiding something. Like a bruise or a cut on his arm. Like... What? Nedzu questioned. Tuya looked off to the side to see if anyone was listening to their conversation before leaning in, was acting like Shoto did when we were still in the care of that a-hole. Nedzu's eyes seemed to flare up when Tuya looked into them. He almost stepped back when the energy of hatred that Nedzu seemed to put out almost immediately after he said that. Oh, really? Then that won't do now, will it? I'll go talk to Izuku before heading over to that elementary school to give them a piece of my mind if that is truly the case. Nedzu walked past the hallways, much to the fear of the students from the sadistic look in his eyes, as he planned a very serious lawsuit against a school. Izuku! He called out, smiling as he opened his office. His sadistic anger vanished when he heard his son's sobs coming from his office desk. He walked over to his desk only to bend down when he saw his young son curled up under the desk, crying his eyes out. Little mouse? Nedzu asked, trying to comfort Izuku's cries. Izuku mumbled between sobs, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here. Can I just stay here, Papa? Nedzu looked at Izuku softly. Izuku, what happened? Tell me, please. Izuku sniffled and began to recount his day. After Uncle Zawa dropped me off, the teacher asked us to introduce ourselves. Each kid told their name, quirk, and what they wanted to be when they grew up. Nedzu nodded, wiping Izuku's face with a tissue. When it got to me, I was just being myself like you told me. Hey, I'm Midoriya Izuku, I'm quirkless and I want to be a hero. They all laughed, everyone, even the teachers. When I told them I wasn't joking, their attitude changed. The teachers didn't believe me when another kid lied about me stealing their pencil and made me go in timeout. They didn't let me go to recess after one of the kids hurt my arm. When I tried to tell them that the other kid hurt me, they brushed me off and said I was lying. I wasn't lying. Izuku sobbed. The kids kept telling me how I couldn't be a hero since I had no quirk. They kept pushing me, teasing me about becoming a hero's punching bag, and lying about me to the teachers. Please, don't make me go back. Izuku pleaded. You won't go back ever again to that school. You know why? Nedzu asked his son, who started to calm down from his sniffling. Why? Izuku looked up to his father, who started to smile back at him. I'll just teach you here. Right here in UA. Nedzu explained proudly. Really? Izuku asked excitedly. Yes. You won't ever have to go back to normal high school if you don't want to. And if you do, I will just set you up in the same one Ida is enrolled in so he can protect you if you wished for when you grow up. Nedzu answered back before Izuku stopped him from saying anything further by hugging onto him. But Papa can teach me. Izuku cheered. Yes, I can. I can begin teaching you as soon as next week. Why until next week? Izuku questioned, tilting his head as Nedzu placed him down as he started a cartoon movie in a small television he set up just for Izuku. Oh, because Papa has some business to attend to make sure certain people sorry for a bad deed that have caused. Nedzu answered, exiting out of his office to go directly to the school to give them a piece of his mind. Don't worry, I have Tuya to come watch over you in just a moment. Nedzu walked fast down the first-year hallway to arrive at the class Tuya was in. Fukuyama Tuya. Report to my office immediately. Nedzu? The teacher questioned as Tuya stood up quickly to get to his office. He is excused. Nedzu reported to the teacher before he moved his attention to the first-year teenager with his dyed black and purple hair. I'm going out for a bit to have a word with that school. You watch over Izuku while I'm gone, Nedzu whispered to him in the hallway. Right, go kick some butt, Tuya commented with it, walking off in the direction Izuku was in. Oh please, they will wish they had no behind after I'm done with them. Nedzu answered back threateningly as he strutted right outside to get to his car. When Nedzu showed up to the school office after all the children went home, every employee was shocked he was there. Nedzu? Principal of UA? Why are you here? The secretary asked with widened eyes. Her little antennas were straight up. To talk with the principal of this establishment on recent matters concerning why my son exactly came home crying. Why you have a son? Nedzu smiled sadistically as the teachers all looked scared. Oh yes, Midoriya Izuku. Ring a bell to anyone here? He was signed in by someone else. Yes, me being his father was certain to bring more attention than I ever wanted for him. I wanted him to have an honest experience with the public, Nedzu responded before the look in his eyes turned dark when one of the teachers paled at hearing the name. It seems it was my mistake. To trust just anybody, teacher or not, with taking care of MY's son. The principal came out of his office from the ruckus outside only to freeze up when he saw the ever-threatening look on Nedzu's face. Before the principal could say anything, Nedzu slammed down lawsuit papers on the table. This is my official statement. I'm suing you for what you have done to my son. These papers list down everything from bullying to discrimination to a restraining order on every single person here to stay far away from me and my son ever again. I will see all of you in court. Nedzu said, walking off after successfully seeing the principal look as if he soiled his pants. For the next week between being the principal of UA and a father, Nedzu was going to the courthouse to see what was the right punishment for the school. In his eyes, it was simple. Getting rid of everyone. The school wasn't the problem, the people in it was the issue. So each person was fired from their positions to never teach again in that school or anyone in that area. The only way for them to teach again is by going to a sort of rehab program that teaches them to respect, stop bullying and discrimination and more. The program made sure that they understand the meaning of their bad ways by going into very tough learning practices. They also had to renew their teaching licenses after all of that if they ever wanted to step foot into a classroom again. The school was under new management by people who Nedzu personally picked out from multiple colleges across the country. He made sure they had good views on the world and absolutely made sure that they dealt with bullying when they first see it. The children who hurt his precious Izuku also got a talking to from him and their parents for exactly what they did. The families got restraining orders as well, just in case. Nedzu walked into his office after a long day of court work to find Tuya hanging out with Izuku. He looked even closer to find they were both napping on the chair. He smiled at the two, happy that they were more comfortable with their new life. Tuya has his family finally happy and Izuku didn't have to get hurt by discrimination. That reminds Nedzu. He should start a quirkless anti-bullying and discrimination type of charity to help people like Izuku grow up safely. What is the most important thing to do if you are a hero in a rescue situation? Nedzu asked, holding up a picture of a hero next to a burning building. Saving the people who need help and making sure they are okay with a medic or emergency responders. Izuku replied quickly. Nedzu nodded, correct. Now what is 12 multiplied by 6? 72? Izuku hesitated before answering with a question. Right. Nedzu congratulated before moving on to the next problem. It has only been a few weeks since Nedzu had taken Izuku out of that wretched elementary school and began teaching him in his office and sometimes at home. Nedzu wouldn't have it any other way. Nedzu smiled. As Izuku continued his work in his little notebook when Nedzu switched over to his next topic that he thought Izuku would be the most interested in. So, how do you feel about analyzing some quirks? Nedzu asked. Yeah. Izuku looked excited when Nedzu places a composition notebook into his hands. Journal no one written on the cover.